Dongman was once the most gifted taekwondo fighter in the country until one day he made a choice that cost him everything. He stayed down on the mat on purpose, through the match, and let the world believe he was a fraud. The money he took for losing was the only way to pay for his little sister's surgery, but nobody knew that. Now he kills dust mites for a living, gets dumped by girls the moment they find out what he does, and watches the guy he lost to on purpose become a national hero using his signature kick. However, before any of this, instead of paying attention to the lesson, Dongman keeps imagining himself fighting someone right there during class, and while he is lost in that thought, the teacher ends up noticing his behavior. The teacher then that whoever is goofing off should stand up right now, making the whole class go quiet. However, no one stands, and the room becomes completely silent, so the teacher angrily shouts again that the person causing trouble should stand up immediately. At that moment, all the students slowly turn their heads toward Dongman and his friend, making it obvious who is responsible, so the teacher throws a piece of chalk straight at them without hesitation. After that, Dongman and his friend are forced to stand up in front of everyone, while the other students look at them with curiosity and start wondering who they really are, especially since their uniforms look messy and worn out. The teacher then begins to scold both of them, asking if they think they are at some kind of summer camp where they can just relax and joke around. Dongman calmly tells the teacher that they were not actually goofing off, trying to defend himself in a polite way. Hearing this, the teacher says that he will let Dongman and Juman off the hook only if they are able to answer his quiz question correctly. In response, Juman says that there is no need for that because everyone already knows how generous and kind they are, and Dongman also asks the teacher to forgive them instead of testing them. However, the teacher still decides to punish them anyway, explaining that such strict discipline is normal, especially in South Korean schools back in the 2000s where corporal punishment was commonly used. Hearing this, Juman quickly changes his mind and says that they will take the quiz instead of being punished without trying. The teacher then explains the situation, saying that there is a 20% chance he will give them a question they actually know, and even then there is still a 40% chance that they will get that question wrong. After explaining this, he asks them what the probability is that they will not get punished in the end. Dongman quickly gives an answer and says that it is 50%, sounding confident even without thinking much. The teacher suddenly starts clapping his hands and praises the answer, then tells both of them to come forward and collect their reward like they have done something right. As the boys walk up to him expecting something good, the teacher suddenly begins hitting them with a wooden stick as their so-called reward, shocking them. Meanwhile, at Pungwon High School for Girls, a female teacher gets really angry when she notices that a girl has brought a microphone into the class during lesson time, which she finds distracting. The teacher quickly walks up, takes the microphone from the girl, and also takes a headband from her friend, making both of them beg her again and again to give their things back. The girl with the microphone dreams of becoming a news anchor one day, and her name is Era. After this, the teacher clearly tells them that as punishment, they have to clean the auditorium after school ends. Hearing that, the girls start acting like they have the flu, pretending to feel weak and saying they should be allowed to go home early instead of staying. But the teacher does not believe them, and they are forced to sit outside the classroom, where they quietly think about what they should do now. Just then, the teacher suddenly rushes out of the class in anger after hearing that someone touched her car, leaving the room empty for a short time. Seeing this chance, the girls quickly go back inside to take their belongings without getting caught. After getting their stuff, they run out of the school happily, feeling excited and free. The next day, at Cheonbang High School, a nerd brings coffee milk for a popular girl named Borum, hoping she will accept it, but she refuses right away without even thinking. After some time, Dongman and Juman walk into the class while eating something casually as they enter. The next day, everyone arrives at the Taekwondo headquarters to watch Dongman's match, including Era and her friend who come there to support him. During the match, Era keeps shouting loudly from the crowd, telling Dongman to use his feet more and saying that he is going to become a champion one day if he keeps fighting like that. Meanwhile, Borum and her friends notice them in the crowd and start talking among themselves, saying that they are just embarrassing everyone around them with how they are acting. At the same time, the nerd from before walks up to Borum and asks her why she gave the coffee milk to Dongman earlier. Hearing this, Borum feels annoyed deep inside and angrily asks him if he does not have any tutoring classes to attend, and questions why he came all the way there just to ask something so pointless. Soon after, The match reaches its end when Dongman delivers a strong mid-air high kick straight to his opponent's face, finishing the fight. Right after winning, Dongman takes off part of his uniform and throws it toward Borum, saying that if anyone asks, she should tell them that she now has a boyfriend. However, the uniform does not reach Borum and instead lands near Era, which makes her feel angry at him for what he just said and did. After that, Era and Borum continue fighting over the uniform, while the coach is also beating up Dongman for doing something like that during the match. Borum then takes Era with him and leaves. Soon, Dongman goes out on a date with a girl and keeps talking to her, telling her all kinds of things to impress her and make himself sound better. The girl then asks him what kind of sports he plays because she has heard that he is a big-shot athlete. Dongman honestly tells her that he has not really done any sports before, which confuses her, so she asks him what he actually does for a living. In response, Dongman walks over and unlocks his car, which he uses for his job as a dust mite doctor, and says that he can give her a ride back home. After seeing that and understanding what he really does, the girl immediately feels turned off and refuses to stay with him even for another second, then quickly leaves the place. It is then revealed that Dongman, who is actually a taekwondo prodigy with great skill, now works by killing dust mites for a living instead of doing something related to sports. On the other hand, Era's friend, who once dreamed of becoming a kind and caring housewife, is now working as a caring call center agent instead. At the same time, Juman works as a buyer in the food department of a teleshopping network, where he handles different products and manages sales every day as part of his job. Meanwhile, Era, who once dreams of sitting at a desk in a newsroom and becoming a news anchor, now ends up sitting at a desk at the information booth of a department store instead, helping customers with questions. From here on, the story of the four troublemakers slowly begins to take shape. One day, while Era is working like usual at her desk, a girl from her old school named Hyunsuk suddenly recognizes her and comes up to talk. Hyunsuk then takes Era to the VIP lounge and says that she knows Era works at the front desk, but she probably has never been inside the VIP lounge before. She also tells her not to feel bad about it, explaining that it is her first time there too and that she only got in by using her boyfriend's card. After that, Hyunsuk takes out an invitation card and proudly says that she is getting married to a doctor, and that their wedding will be held at the Hilton. She continues by saying that after the wedding, they will move into a luxury mansion and start showing off her ring, which has a large 2-carat diamond on it. Hyunsuk then tells Era that she should get married soon as well. After that, she shows Era a picture of her boyfriend, and it turns out he is a bald man in his 30s. Even so, Hyunsuk keeps talking proudly, while saying things that sound a bit rude and unpleasant. Later that same day, Era calls her own boyfriend, who turns out to be very broke and not doing well financially. Later, Dongman gets stuck in an elevator with a beautiful girl who finds him attractive and starts wondering if he might be a doctor. When the elevator finally reaches the floor, the woman meets Era and immediately asks why she never introduced Dongman before and also asks if he is her boyfriend. Era replies that he is not her boyfriend but says that he has a huge crush on her. She also adds that looks matter to her, and that Dongman is basically the minimum standard she would consider dating. After that, Era takes Dongman along with her and they arrive at a barbecue restaurant. At another table, a group of boys keep staring at Era's legs and talking about them, so Dongman quickly covers her up using his white coat. Soon after, Era notices her friend from earlier outside the restaurant looking at Dongman, so she suddenly asks Dongman to stroke her hair like couples do in movies. When the girl outside sees this, she gets visibly jealous. After that, a waiter comes over to take their order, and Era ends up ordering a lot of food without hesitation. Seeing this, Dongman quietly wonders if her boyfriend must have finally passed some big exam or gotten successful, because she is ordering so much like she is celebrating. Dongman then starts talking badly about Era's boyfriend, saying that he still cannot get his life together while his girlfriend is working non-stop and doing everything for him. On her way home, Era decides to buy a brand new bicycle for her boyfriend, but she keeps trying to call him and his phone does not go through. Even then, she chooses to carry the heavy bicycle all the way up the stairs by herself to his apartment. When she finally reaches there, she brings the bike inside, and her boyfriend shows up wearing his pants inside out, looking messy and careless. He does not look very happy to see the bicycle and tells her that she did not need to buy something like that for him. Then he introduces Era to a woman standing in the kitchen, saying that she cooks for him and his friend. Era quickly notices that the woman is shaking a lot and looks very nervous, and she is also wearing Mookie's sweatshirt, which is her boyfriend's clothing, making the situation feel even more suspicious to her. Mookie quickly says that they just happen to like the same style of clothes and even use the same perfume. While hearing this, Era suddenly notices that the woman has a hair tie in her hair that looks exactly like hers, and one part of it is even broken in the same way. After seeing that, Era loses her temper and hits Mookie on the face with her bag, taking out all her anger on him and shouting that this was the designer bag he bought for her. She also says that he told her they would get married soon and kept saying many sweet things to her, even telling her that if she is struggling, she should just stop studying. The woman then speaks up and says that she is not just some old woman who cooks for students. After everything, Era takes her bicycle and leaves his apartment angrily. However, she cannot find a bus because it is already too late at night. While she is standing there, she suddenly notices Mookie and that same woman sitting together inside a car behind her. On the other side, Dongman's coach is trying hard to convince him to return to Taekwondo, but Dongman firmly refuses and says that he is not going back. That night, Era is sitting inside a car with her ex-boyfriend and another woman, who hands her a deposit of $3,000 for their room along with an extra $300 as a bonus. While they are there, they suddenly hear breaking news playing, saying that the news anchor Hiren has separated from her husband after 3 years of marriage. At the same time, Dongman is standing on the footpath, waiting to cross the road, while people behind him are also watching the same news about Hiren, the famous anchor who had married a very rich man but is now separated. When the signal turns green, Dongman begins to cross the road, but the car that Era is in almost hits him before quickly stopping. After stopping the car, they all rush out in a hurry and go up to him, asking if he is okay. Dongman then looks closely and recognizes the man as Mookie, and he asks him if the woman sitting beside him is his relative and if she is expecting a child. The woman quickly says that she is not his relative, and just as she is about to explain the truth, Era suddenly appears there. At that moment, Era speaks up first and tells Dongman that the woman is actually pregnant with Mookie's child. Era tells him while crying that Mookie used the money she gave him to make kimchi with that woman, and then they even ended up having a baby together, which makes everything worse for her. Hearing this, Dongman becomes very angry right away and grabs Mookie by the collar, saying that he is going to teach him a proper lesson for what he did. The woman with Mookie also gets angry in return and yells at Dongman for touching Mookie like that, and soon all of them start arguing loudly with each other over the situation. On their way back later, Dongman tells Era that the woman they saw earlier must have been some kind of athlete because she showed almost superhuman strength when they were arguing. Era replies that it is obvious she is strong since she makes a living by rolling heavy radish kimchi with her hands every day. After that, Era says that she plans to tell everyone that she is the one who dumped her boyfriend first, so she can avoid feeling embarrassed in front of others. While they are walking down the stairs of a public bridge, Era suddenly breaks the heel of her shoe and almost falls down. She then starts tearing up and says that today has been the worst day for her. Seeing this, Dongman gets annoyed and scolds her for always buying cheap knockoff shoes, and then he angrily kicks the broken heel away from her in frustration. Meanwhile, Era's ex-boyfriend and that woman is sitting inside their car, talking about what just happened. The woman comments that it is a good thing Era has a brother who looks out for her, but Mookie quickly corrects her and says that the guy is not her brother, he is just her friend, and they have actually been friends for about 20 years. As for Era and Dongman, they keep walking for a long distance, and since her heels are broken, she now wears a shopping bag over her feet to protect them while moving. After a while, she accidentally drops her bag, so Dongman tells her to just throw it away since it was given to her by Mookie and is a bad memory anyway. However, Era refuses and says that it is a designer bag, and she plans to get it repaired the next day instead of throwing it. Dongman then takes her to a nearby shop and picks out a new cheap bag for her to use for now, and she agrees to use it until she cannot use it anymore. As they continue walking together, they start joking around and messing with each other like usual, and Dongman keeps gently patting her on the head, which makes her feel shy and gives her butterflies inside. In a flashback, Dongman, Era, and her friend are all playing together when they were kids. Dongman is practicing his usual Taekwondo moves, but while doing that, he accidentally breaks the wooden board that Solhee is using to carry their breakfast. This makes Solhee cry because everything falls apart. Era immediately gets angry at Dongman and asks him why he always keeps smashing things without thinking. In frustration, Era even hits him on the head, and this time Dongman starts crying too. Back in the present, Era casually gives her trash to Dongman, which makes him really angry at her for treating him like that. Soon after, Sulhee comes out of Era's apartment carrying some suitcases and explains that Juman forgot to pack for his business trip again, so she is just helping him out like always. After this, Dongman goes back to his house and changes into more casual clothes while thinking to himself that he needs to become a better person and improve how he behaves from now on. At that moment, Era also shows up after dressing up really nicely and looking very beautiful. She keeps teasing Dongman and annoys him by saying that she is so pretty that he must just be jealous of her. Dongman then notices that Era is still using the bag he bought for her, and he casually asks if she wants him to get her another one when the new season comes out. Upon hearing what Dongman has to say, Era immediately starts mocking him and breaks out into laughter over his words, which gets on Dongman's nerves so badly that he reaches out and grabs her by the neck out of pure frustration. In a quick attempt to break herself free from his grip, Era wastes no time and drives her elbow straight into him with enough force and power behind it that the impact feels as though it could very nearly shatter his bones completely. After that, Dongman makes his way over to the KBC news office, where he unexpectedly comes across Hiran Park, who also happens to be present at that very same location. Shifting over to what is happening elsewhere at the same time, Sulhee shows up and brings along a set of backpacks to deliver to Juman, and upon receiving them, Juman begins behaving in a noticeably flirty and playful manner toward her. Right at that very moment, before things can go any further between the two of them, another girl steps into the elevator and casually extends an invitation to Juman to join her on a movie date. Watching this whole situation unfold right in front of her eyes, Sulhee feels a wave of sadness and disappointment wash over her, and she silently slips out of the elevator without drawing any attention to herself. The moment she is completely out of earshot and gone from the scene, the remaining girls in the elevator begin whispering among themselves and gossiping about how the newly appointed senior associate named Yejin has developed a serious crush on Juman and is said to be entirely head over heels for him. Later on, Hiran sits down for an interview where she makes the announcement that she will be heading back to the newsroom following her recent controversy. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, Dongman happens to be watching her interview play out on a screen when a man by the name of Kyungkoo suddenly and forcefully drags him away, telling him that all he needs to do is simply stand in one spot and nothing more. Kyungkoo ends up bringing Dongman straight to the set of a quiz show, where Dongman immediately starts feeling nervous and anxious the moment his eyes land on the question that is being displayed across a massive screen in front of everyone. Much to his complete and total surprise, the host of the show goes ahead and selects him as the person who is supposed to step up and answer the quiz question out loud. After spending a considerable amount of time thinking it over carefully, Dongman goes ahead and chooses option number 3 as his final answer, and coincidentally, a girl who is seated nearby and happens to have a very strong and obvious crush on Dongman ends up selecting the exact same option as well. Unfortunately for both of them, the host announces to everyone present that the correct answer was actually number 2 all along, and as a direct result of this, every single contestant participating in the show ends up getting eliminated one after another. The host then goes on to explain to the audience that following such an absolutely unprecedented and shocking start to the show, there is now only a single contestant remaining, and the final question that is about to be asked has the very real potential to make that one person the last one still standing. It turns out, the final contestant is Mubin, who happens to say the correct answer. Later, Dongman recognizes him as the same nerd who used to follow that girl in his class around with coffee milk all the time. Dongman then asks him if he remembers him, saying that he once returned the coffee milk to him and even borrowed his designer t-shirt before. Just then, Kyungkoo shows up and tells Dongman to make that guy feel uncomfortable on purpose. He even takes out some money from his wallet and puts it into Dongman's pocket, telling him to take it as a reward for everything he has done today. After that, Kyungkoo walks over to Mubin and tells him that he is a producer on the show and that they would love for him to join their end-of-year special program. Meanwhile, Era arrives at the Hilton Hotel for her friend's wedding, where she also runs into some of her other friends who look nervous after seeing her there. When it is finally time for dinner, Era and her friends sit together at the table and start having a conversation with each other. Era's friends start acting strange around her and even invite her out for dinner, but instead of feeling happy, Era feels like they are trying to insult her because she does not have a boyfriend or a fancy job like them. Feeling uncomfortable, Era makes an excuse and says she is going to the bathroom, thinking to herself that she should stop embarrassing herself and just go back home. While moving around, she runs into her friend whose wedding she came to, and Hyunsuk quickly grabs her hand and takes her somewhere in a hurry. Hyunsuk then tells Era that she has to pretend to be Cindy Young and host her wedding reception, but Era looks confused because she has no idea who that is. Hyunsuk explains that Cindy Young is a news anchor from Hong Kong who was supposed to host the reception but cannot come anymore. She then promises Era that if she helps her and does this favor, she can wear a very luxurious and beautiful dress for the event. After hearing that, Era agrees, wears the stunning dress, and walks up to the microphone while everyone in the hall cannot stop staring at her in surprise. Era then grabs the microphone and tells everyone that they are about to have a special poem recital by the groom's aunt, but before that, she suggests that they should ask the bride to sing a song for everyone. About 10 minutes earlier, Hyunsuk had told Era that the dress actually belonged to Cindy Young and that it was very expensive, but she still could not come to the event. She also asked Era to make sure the bride sings at the reception, but to do it in a subtle way so it does not feel forced. Back in the present, Era smiles and tells the audience to give the bride a big round of applause. Just then, Mubin also arrives at the wedding, but as soon as he hears Hyunsuk's terrible singing voice, it feels so painful that it almost makes his ears bleed. Everyone in the hall becomes upset and confused, wondering why she is shouting like she is at a loud rock concert and acting in such a wild way. Seeing this, Era quickly takes the microphone away from her and tells her that she should look at her mother-in-law's face, who is clearly embarrassed after hearing such a bad performance. Era then takes the mic and addresses everyone present, expressing her complete disbelief that they are all finally gathered here on Hyunsuk's wedding day, calling it nothing short of a miracle since she never once imagined that Hyunsuk would be the one walking down the aisle and tying the knot before her. Era also takes a moment to point out that Hyunsuk was quite a remarkable and extraordinary person even back during their school days together. Upon hearing this, everyone in attendance immediately starts wondering and speculating among themselves whether Era is about to bring up and spill all the details about Hyunsuk's past relationships and former exes. However, rather than saying anything negative or embarrassing, Era goes on to describe how Hyunsuk was a complete and total bookworm back in the day, whose one and only true first love happened to be a good book and nothing else. She then wraps up her speech by expressing her warm wishes, hoping that now Hyunsuk is finally starting a family together with the love of his life. The two of them have nothing but a wonderful and fun time ahead of them. Shortly after that, the wedding ceremony officially gets underway, and Era slips away to change back into her regular everyday clothes. Era then goes and settles down next to Mubin and the rest of the boys, where the group gets into a lively discussion about just how much alcohol they are actually capable of drinking between all of them. They even go as far as pressuring Hyunsuk himself into having a drink as well, leaving him with absolutely no choice but to go along with it and take a sip. Later that same night, Dongman finally arrives back home, where his mom has gone all out and prepared an impressive spread of all kinds of fancy and delicious dishes just for him. Dongman even brings a gift for his mom, which is a wearable back support thing, and his mom says that it looks quite expensive. Dongman asks her why she is making her own birthday meal when he already told her that they should just go out and eat instead of cooking at home. Just then, Dongman's father gets angry at his wife and tells her to just eat without saying anything more. He then turns to Dongman and asks where he got the money for that gift and questions if he even has a proper job right now. Dongman's father continues by saying that he should focus on what he is good at instead of wasting his time doing other useless things. However, Dongman responds by asking if his father has read those articles about him from 2007 and says that no one wants to learn from him anymore because of that. He also clearly tells his father that he will never go anywhere near a taekwondo gym again for the rest of his life. Dongman repeats that he does not want anything to do with it, but his father tells him to be quiet because Dong-hee might hear everything they are saying. While making his way back home, Dongman receives a text message from his mom letting him know that he should give his dad a call once he gets in, since his dad is unable to fall asleep whenever the two of them are in the middle of a fight with each other. Rather than heading straight home like originally planned, Dongman ends up making his way over to the taekwondo gym instead, where two guys are already sitting around watching a fighting match play out on a screen. One of the guys then catches sight of a picture of the coach standing alongside Dongman and curiously asks whether he is a better and more skilled player than the coach himself. The coach responds by explaining that the guy asking is nothing more than a puppy who mistakenly believes he is a fierce and powerful tiger, while Dongman on the other hand is a real tiger who has somehow ended up living the modest and humble life of a pup. Without missing a beat, the coach then reaches over and delivers a firm slap to the guy, making it clear that he has heard all about how he has still been going around the neighborhood picking fights and causing trouble with people. Right at that moment, Dongman unexpectedly walks through the door carrying food along with him, and the coach is genuinely caught off guard and surprised by his sudden appearance, noting with amazement that this is actually the very first time Dongman has bothered to come and visit him ever since the gym first opened its doors. The guy sitting beside the coach turns to Dongman and brings up the fact that he has heard all about how Dongman's kick was supposedly legendary and something truly special back in his prime days, and he goes on to challenge him by asking why he doesn't just step up into the ring and show him a thing or two firsthand. The guy pushes even further by mentioning that he has also heard Dongman doesn't exactly throw hands for free and casually throws out the offer of $100 in exchange for just one single light round between the two of them. Much to everyone's surprise, Dongman doesn't hesitate and actually agrees to go ahead and have a match with him. With that settled, the two of them waste no time and the fight kicks off with Dongman charging straight at his opponent and throwing a punch right at him, but his opponent reacts quickly and smoothly dodges out of the way before lightly landing a hit directly on Dongman's face in return. Dongman then attempts to follow up by going in with a sharp elbow strike, but things don't go according to plan, and he ends up losing his footing and crashing down onto the ground instead. Seeing this, the other player bursts out laughing and taunts Dongman by pointing out that the coach had told him Dongman used to fly all around the ring with ease, but looking at him now, his physical condition has clearly become absolutely terrible. The moment those words reach Dongman's ears, something snaps inside him and he suddenly springs back up onto his feet and attempts to launch a powerful kick at the guy, but before he even gets the chance to follow through, he ends up taking another clean hit straight to the face once again. Just as the guy is about to land an uppercut on him, the coach quickly steps in and stops the fight before things get worse. Later on, Dongman asks the coach if he can give him a ride back home, but the coach refuses and says he is not going in that direction. Dongman then says that he is never going to make a comeback again because he has already lost everything. Hearing this, the coach throws a roll of toilet paper at him and tells him to wipe his face and leave before he makes him even more angry. On the other side, Era is helping Mujin, who ends up vomiting because he drank too much earlier. Mujin then tells her to just take the bus home because he is not in a condition to take her back himself. Hearing this, Era feels upset and calls Dongman, asking him to come pick her up. At first, Dongman gets annoyed and says that he is not her personal driver, but when he REA. Meanwhile, Era is leaving the hotel alongside Mujin while two boys make fun of her, asking if she washed her face. One of them even invites her to his car, saying he can take her back home, but Era refuses and says that she will make her own way home. The other guy in blue suit then steps in, saying his car is brand new and his driver's on his way too. After that, both of the boys start flexing their cars in front of Era and say that each one of them could take her home. Era then asks the other guy where his car is, so when he tells her, Era straight up goes to the car and breaks the side mirror. She then moves to the other guy's car and breaks his side mirror as well. Era then furiously tells them that she is not Cindy Young and her name is Era, and she works at the information desk at the Lucky department store. She also says that if they want compensation for their side mirrors, they can come and find her. One of the guys then gets mad and grabs her arm and starts cursing at her. After that, the guy slaps Era in the face, and Dongman arrives at the right moment and sees that. He then runs straight towards them, so Era quickly tells the guy in blue suit to call the police, and the one who slapped her to get in the car and lock the doors. Instead of getting in the car, the guy grabs a chair, but before he could throw, Dongman kicks the chair. He then slaps the guy in the face and continues to slap her, asking why he would slap Era. The guy then moves in and attempts to launch an attack on Dongman, but this time Dongman is ready and smoothly dodges out of the way before firing back with a powerful kick that connects directly with the side of the guy's head. Shortly after that, the police show up on the scene and end up taking everybody down to the police station, where the injured guy wastes no time in telling the officers that Dongman came flying at him out of nowhere with a flying kick and that he now cannot move his wrist at all as a result of the whole ordeal. The police officer handling the situation becomes furious upon learning that Dongman was once a trained and professional taekwondo athlete, and yet here he is going around the neighborhood beating people up like this. The guy then shifts his anger toward Era as well and demands that the police officers go ahead and arrest her too, throwing out accusations that she is nothing but a gold digger and a thug who deserves to be locked up just as much as anyone else in the room. Mu Jin is quick to jump in and set the record straight, pointing out that those accusations are completely off base since Era never actually swindled the guy out of a single thing and the only thing she did was accidentally break his side view mirror and nothing more. Hearing all of this going back and forth, Era reaches her boiling point and fires back with a warning of her own, making it very clear to everyone in the room that they would be making a serious mistake by messing with her, boldly declaring that she is a complete psychopath. Era then turns to the guy and delivers a very firm and serious warning, making it crystal clear that if Dongman ends up getting thrown behind bars, she is going to show up at his workplace without fail every single morning without exception, and on top of that she will make it her personal mission to completely ruin his wedding and even go as far as ruining his kid's very first day at school as well. The police ultimately make the decision to let Dongman go free, and as the two of them make their way back together, Era turns to him and asks why he is walking around with such a sad and gloomy expression on his face. Dongman responds by telling her that he fully intends to pay her back for everything she did, but Era brushes it off and explains that she already had to pay for the broken mirrors regardless of the whole situation, and that the money was simply taken and put towards settling things on his behalf. After that, the two of them find a nearby park and settle down together, and Era curiously asks him whether it has genuinely been a long time since he last got to kick like that. She also brings up the fact that she got a rare and exciting opportunity to hold the mic earlier that day, and without much warning she suddenly breaks out into song right then and there. Just as quickly however, she notices that her mouth is starting to hurt quite a bit, and Dongman reaches over and gently holds her face in his hands, asking with concern whether something is wrong with her. His concern then rapidly turns into burning anger as the thought crosses his mind that he really should have just gone ahead and taken that guy out completely when he had the chance. Era then fires back and tells him that he really shouldn't be getting himself all worked up and emotional over someone else's problems like that. Dongman responds by telling her that while he may very well feel ashamed and embarrassed about where he currently stands in life, he absolutely refuses to sit back and allow her to feel that same sense of shame because of him. He goes on to tell her firmly that she should never allow anyone in this world to look down on her or treat her as anything less, and openly admits that he himself is nothing more than a pathetic guy who has been reduced to using his athletic abilities to go around beating people up. Dongman further adds that pretty much everyone around them sees him as nothing but a complete loser with no future ahead of him. Era however refuses to see things that way and pushes back, telling him that she has been watching him closely for the past 20 years of her life, and that there is not a single person on this entire earth who knows him better than she does, which is exactly why she holds on to the firm belief that he is going to make it big and achieve something truly great one day. Era then slowly gets up on her feet and prepares to leave, but before she can even take a single step, Dongman suddenly wraps his arms around her waist and pulls her into a tight hug, showing his emotions and telling her that she has made him cry. Dongman then gently tells her that she really needs to stop crying over those awful guys, because seeing her so sad and hurt like this makes his heart feel heavy and painful inside. Hearing this, Era lightly hits him on the head and tells him that he should focus on fixing his own life first. After that, Dongman gathers his courage and confesses his feelings to her, saying that she should just spend time with him instead. He then grabs her hand and says that he will treat her to some chicken and other food and tells her that they should hurry up and go together. The very next day, Era finds herself sitting in front of the television watching the news when she suddenly starts feeling a wave of jealousy wash over her upon catching sight of a particularly pretty girl appearing on the screen. Sulhi then essentially forces her to sit down and eat something that she has gone ahead and cooked up herself, telling Era that if she were anywhere near as talented as her, she would be pouring absolutely everything she has into it without holding anything back. A little while after that, Era makes her way over to Dongman's house carrying a pack of food along with her, only to find that Dongman has just stepped out of the shower and is standing there wearing nothing but a towel wrapped around him. Dongman is completely caught off guard by her sudden appearance and immediately asks her what exactly she is doing showing up at his place like this. Era responds by pointing out that he really should have gone ahead and changed his passcode exactly like she had been telling him to do all along. She then makes her way over to grab a bowl from the shelf but quickly runs into a problem when she realizes that the bowl has been placed far too high up for her to reach on account of her short height. Dongman steps in to help her out, but in the process the two of them end up bumping and crashing straight into each other in an awkward collision. After recovering from that moment, Dongman goes ahead and gets himself properly dressed, and the two of them settle on sitting down and enjoying a meal together. Dongman then tells her that they should not see each other in the morning and limit it to evening. Dongman then receives a text from Hiren saying she is coming over if he keeps ignoring her. Dongman quickly flips over his phone that makes Era furious and asks if he is hiding a girl from her. Dongman says that it's not that and it was just a spam. Era then tells him that if she shows her face around him one more time then it will be the last day she ever breathes. Over on the other side of things, Hiren is behind the wheel of her car and is in the middle of a phone conversation with someone about Era. Hiren is genuinely taken aback and surprised when she finds out that Era has ended up working at a department store rather than pursuing a career in broadcasting like she herself has done. A little while later, Hiren pulls up and walks into a nearby restaurant where she comes across Era sitting there in the middle of eating a bowl of ramen. Era looks up and is completely startled to see her standing there, and immediately remarks on how unbelievable it is that the ex-wife of a millionaire is standing right in front of her eating at a cheap little diner right outside her workplace, at the exact moment she happens to be on her break of all times. Hiren gets straight to the point and demands that Era hand over Dongman's phone number or at the very least his home address without any further delay. Era shoots back by claiming that she genuinely has no idea what either of those things are, explaining that she has had absolutely no contact with him ever since he packed up and moved down south together with his wife. She goes on to add that it never felt right or appropriate to her to maintain any kind of contact with a man who was married, since doing something like that goes completely against proper etiquette in her eyes. Upon hearing all of this, Hiren responds with a slow and knowing smirk directed straight at Era, which instantly makes Era's blood boil with fury, though despite how angry she feels on the inside, she ultimately holds herself back and chooses not to act on it. Era then grabs the glass of water, and instead of throwing it on Hiren's face, she smashes it on the table. Later, a guy approaches Era, saying their regular who does the broadcasting just took a 3-month leave of absence, and they don't have anyone else. He then suggests that she should do the broadcast as she has a clear voice. Over on Dongman's end of things, he is busy hauling something incredibly heavy all the way up to the very top floor in order to carry out his pest control and cleaning job. Dongman is clearly having an extremely tough and exhausting time with the whole thing and suggests to his senior that he should go ahead and take care of the fumigation side of things while Dongman himself handles cleaning the bidet and the filters instead. His senior, however, does not take kindly to this suggestion at all and immediately loses his temper with Dongman, making it very clear that he is expected to always listen to and follow whatever his seniors tell him to do without any pushback or complaints whatsoever. After going back and forth about it for a bit, Dongman ultimately gives in and tells his senior that he will go ahead and get his assigned job done properly without any further argument from his end. Shifting over to what Solhee is up to around the same time, she is in the middle of sampling some cherries together with one of her colleagues and finds them to be surprisingly and wonderfully tasty. She then suddenly catches sight of Juman standing directly in front of them and immediately turns into a complete blushing and lovey-dovey mess at the mere sight of him standing there. Without any warning whatsoever, one of the cherries gets completely and dangerously lodged inside Solhee's throat and she begins choking on it in a very serious and alarming manner. Juman immediately springs into action and rushes straight over to her side, working as quickly as he possibly can to help dislodge the cherry that is stuck deep within her throat. He then carefully lays Solhee flat out on the table and proceeds to perform a full and proper round of CPR on her in a determined effort to save her life. After the whole terrifying ordeal is finally over and done with, Solhee slowly gets herself back up onto her feet and in a somewhat dazed and disoriented state begins quietly picking up all the cherries that had scattered and fallen onto the floor during the chaos earlier. A girl then makes her way over to Juman and gushes over the fact that what he pulled off earlier looked like something that had been ripped straight out of a superhero movie scene, adding that he looked incredibly cool and impressive while doing it. She even throws in a playful and flirtatious comment, saying that she almost finds herself wishing that she had been the one who got to eat that cherry instead of Sulhi. Upon hearing all of this being directed at Juman, Sulhi feels a sharp wave of annoyance rise up inside her and she grabs a cherry and hurls it straight at Juman's head in a burst of pure frustration. Later on that very same day, Era catches up with Dongman and excitedly lets him know that she is the one who has been chosen to handle the announcements today. Dongman looks genuinely confused by this and asks why exactly he needs to be there all of a sudden, so Era takes a moment to explain that this is an incredibly important and meaningful moment for her personally and that she has a very specific task in mind that she needs him to take care of. She goes on to tell him that she is set to go live at exactly 3:30 and asks whether he would be willing to record her very first broadcast for her. Dongman points out in response that she only has roughly 20 minutes remaining before that happens, so she really needs to get a move on and hurry up, while he heads off in the meantime to scout out a good spot close enough to a speaker so that he can capture the audio as clearly as possible. Shortly after that, Era steps up and begins delivering her broadcast with full confidence, and true to his word, Dongman positions himself carefully near the speaker and records every single word of her voice just like he promised he would do. During the announcement, Era says that outdoor wear is currently on sale on the 8th floor and tells everyone to come and check it out if they are interested. Later, Dongman plays back the recording for Era so she can hear herself. Era cannot stop smiling because she feels really happy and excited about finally doing something she truly enjoys. At the same time, a man wearing a hat arrives at the department store and starts asking around while looking for Era. That night, the same man quietly follows Era from a distance, watching her without her noticing. Era then happens to notice that someone is following closely behind her and immediately jumps to the conclusion that it must be the same person who had slapped her earlier, which puts her completely on edge. She then takes off running as fast as she can, and just before she manages to get herself onto the bus and out of reach, the guy catches up and stops her from boarding. Era spins around on the spot as fast as she possibly can and swings her bag at him with full force in an attempt to defend herself, only to discover in that moment that the person standing in front of her is none other than Mubin. A little while after that whole misunderstanding plays out, Era calms herself down and apologizes to him, while also making it clear that sneaking around and following her like that was not something he should have been doing in the first place. Mubin acknowledges that she is absolutely right about that and explains that he had actually been trying to find the right moment to hand her a gift for quite some time now without success. It turns out that the gift in question is actually a brand new pair of sneakers, and Mubin goes on to explain that he had noticed her heels had gotten completely broken on those side mirrors the other day and figured that a good pair of sneakers might help her feel a whole lot lighter. Era asks whether this is all just some kind of joke he is pulling on her or whether he has made some sort of bet with someone else to test her out and see how she reacts. Mubin is quick to assure her that he is not pranking her in the slightest and tells her genuinely and sincerely that he is simply interested in getting to know her better as a person. Mubin also says that ever since that night, he can't stop thinking about her and he spent days coming up with this surprise so he could see her again. He also says that he bought this suit brand new and he went to get his hair done today too and he booked a restaurant and filled his car up with gas. Hearing that, Era then starts laughing and asks him why he filled up his car, and where were he gonna take her. Mubin then goes ahead and puts forward the proposal that she go on 10 dates with him, confidently telling her that he is more than capable of being a really great date and that she won't regret giving him a chance. After laying that offer out on the table, Mubin gets up onto his feet and crouches down to personally help her put on the brand new shoes he brought for her. On the other hand, Dongman is sitting on the bus and passing the time by watching a mixed martial arts match playing out on his screen and taking everything in with great interest. He soon arrives at the Taekwondo gym and wastes no time in asking the coach directly whether getting into mixed martial arts would actually be enough to earn him decent and sustainable money. The coach reacts with genuine happiness and enthusiasm upon hearing this and encourages Dongman to go right ahead and pursue whatever path it is that he truly wants to follow. The coach then gets a little more curious and asks Dongman what is behind this sudden and intense focus on making money, pointing out that he is still far too young to be stressing himself out over such things. Dongman opens up and tells him that more than anything else, he wants to be able to walk through life with his head held high and his chin up with pride, and on top of that he wants to be in a position where he is actually capable of properly taking care of his parents the way they deserve. A little while later, Era unexpectedly crosses paths with Dongman out on the street and pulls out some drinks she has brought along, suggesting with a cheerful smile that the two of them should sit down and enjoy a drink together. After all of that, Era and Dongman make their way over to a peculiar and unfamiliar building with the goal of getting up to its rooftop, where they plan to hang out together and pass the time with a few drinks between them. Once they finally make it up there, the two of them pull out their drinks and settle in, and Era starts playing back her broadcast recording over and over again on repeat without showing any signs of getting tired of it. She is completely convinced that it sounds absolutely amazing, but Dongman raises an eyebrow and asks her whether she has genuinely been walking around doing this everywhere she goes. He then pushes her a little further by telling her straight up that if she loves it that much and feels that strongly about it, then she should simply stop holding herself back and go ahead and apply to become a proper anchor already. Era, however, shuts the idea down and says she has no interest in doing that, explaining that while broadcasting companies like to advertise that things like educational background and age do not matter to them, the whole thing is nothing but one big lie as far as she is concerned. Dongman fires back by pointing out that it does not make any sense for her to be sitting on her dreams and refusing to chase them, especially considering she has always been the first one to turn around and push him to go after his own without hesitation. The two of them then lay themselves down, and Dongman admits that more than anything in the world he just wants to be truly rich someday. Era reaches over and takes hold of his hand, asking him in a half-joking and half-serious way that if he ever does manage to strike it rich one day, whether she could go ahead and be his trophy wife. She then rests her head on his arm as though it were a perfectly comfortable pillow, and gazes up at him to ask whether he has any real aspirations or dreams that he is quietly holding onto deep down inside. Dongman tells her that it's better to live without aspirations as they just make them feel pathetic. She also thinks that he is right because there is no point in dreaming as she is just a girl working the information desk in real life. Dongman tells her not to fall asleep over his arm, and then he touches her face, realizing that her skin is actually smooth. Era gets up and tells him to stop, saying he also hugged her that day they went to the police station. Era tells him not to touch her again and says that it's because she might feel something between them. The next day, Solhee wakes up earlier than Juman and he feels surprised when he sees her already up and moving around. She quickly picks up a briefcase and says that all the successful office workers carry something like this these days. Hearing that, Juman asks her why she keeps acting like his mother and taking care of everything for him. On the other side, Dongman also wakes up and leaves his house, but as soon as he steps outside, he sees his coach already waiting there in his van. Dongman then starts asking him one question after another without stopping, not even giving him a moment to answer properly. The coach slowly gets more and more annoyed by this non-stop talking, and finally, feeling frustrated, he hands Dongman a pair of tickets for the upcoming RFC Fighting Challenge match, telling him that they can go together and watch the live mixed martial arts event. Later on, Dongman and his senior are making their way along their usual route heading out to their next job, and the conversation turns to how deeply unhappy and dissatisfied Dongman is with the amount he is currently pulling in from his salary. Over on Era's end of things at the same time, she makes her way back into the broadcasting room where the guy there informs her that an applicant has now come forward for the open broadcaster position, and because of that he believes they are going to be going ahead and holding formal interviews sometime that very day. With that news now out in the open, Era and the woman who has shown up specifically for the interview find themselves standing across from one another, both ready and determined to prove once and for all which one of them truly has what it takes to come out on top and claim the position for herself. Over on Dongman's end of things, his senior is absolutely fuming with rage and tells him point blank that if he has any kind of problem with him then he should just go ahead and quit his job and be done with it. The senior then becomes convinced that Dongman is deliberately clenching his jaw right there in front of his face and demands to know why exactly he would have the nerve to do something like that. Dongman fires back without the slightest hint of backing down, telling him plainly and simply that he does not need anyone's permission to clench his own jaw whenever he feels like it. Those words push the senior completely over the edge and he loses all control, throwing a punch straight at Dongman that ends up barely even registering or having any real effect on him whatsoever. Before storming off and making his exit, the senior turns back one final time and makes it crystal clear once again that Dongman should go ahead and quit the job since they have absolutely no need or use for him anymore. Back over at the studio at the same time, The girl sitting right beside Era is in the middle of delivering her broadcast, which immediately has Era quietly wondering to herself what exactly is going on with the girl's enunciation and the way she is pronouncing everything. One of the interviewers responds to her performance, however, by declaring that it was excellent and expressing his belief that she must have put in serious time studying at a professional broadcasting academy. Then it is Era's turn to step up, and the moment she opens her mouth and begins speaking, both interviewers are visibly and completely stunned by just how incredibly talented and polished she truly sounds. As if the situation could not get any more uncomfortable, the interviewers then make the decision to go ahead and ask both candidates directly about their age, and upon hearing the question, Era pushes back by pointing out that she was under the clear impression that there was absolutely no age limit attached to this position whatsoever. The interviewer then says that they are going to deliberate on their announcements, so he asks both of them to step outside for 10 minutes. Later, Era overhears the girl freaking out in the bathroom, and turns out the girl is getting the advantage because someone she knows' husband works here as a manager. After 10 minutes, both of them go back and the interviewer tells them that they have added up their scores for various criteria, and decided to go with Yanji. After everything that happened, Era heads back to her position working at the front desk of the department store and sends her dad a quick text letting him know that she is far too swamped and busy to come and see him today. A little while later she follows up with an actual phone call to her dad, during which she puts on a brave face and tells him all about how she is working at the front desk of the department store and how they were practically on their knees begging her to come and work there for them. While she is still in the middle of all of that, Era suddenly spots Dongman nearby, and he casually walks over and suggests that the two of them should head somewhere and grab a bite to eat together. Once they are sitting down and settled in over lunch, Era goes ahead and spins the exact same story for Dongman as well, painting the picture of how the department store was desperately pleading with her to stay on at the front desk because she is essentially the face and image of the entire company. Dongman listens to all of it quietly and then slowly turns to face her before telling her that she is free to go ahead and cry as much as she needs to right here and right now, because there is nobody around who is going to see her or judge her for it. With those words hanging in the air between them, Era finally lets her guard down completely and the tears begin to fall, and Dongman responds by tenderly guiding her head to rest gently against his shoulder, silently offering her all the comfort and support she needs in that vulnerable and emotional moment. On his way back home, Dongman's coach shows up to pick him up for the MMA match. Dongman gets inside the van and tells his coach that he is done seeing him as a coach and that they can just be friends from now on. They finally arrive at the location, and the coach gets annoyed with him, telling him that they need to hurry up or their tickets are going to go to waste. At the WFC match, the main event turns out to be featuring a former Taekwondo star who is now known as Korea's pride of the lightweight division, Taksu Kim. The coach points him out and tells Dongman to pay close attention to that guy, and it turns out that Dongman already knows who he is. The coach starts wondering out loud why both of them used to be great fighters back in the day, yet only Dongman ends up living like a total loser while Taksu goes on to achieve great things. He makes Dongman feel bad by pointing at Taksu and telling him to look at how well Taksu is doing in life, saying that is what it really means to win. The fight gets started, and Taksu's opponent goes for a punch to try and counter him, but Taksu fires back with a clean roundhouse kick that connects right on the guy's face. It turns out to be a KO finish in just 1 minute into the fight. Watching that happen, the coach gets really furious and tells Dongman that the roundhouse kick Taksu just used is actually Dongman's move, and that Taksu is honestly the last person on this entire earth who should be pulling off his technique. After that, the story shifts into a flashback where Dongman is in the middle of getting ready for his Taekwondo fight, and his coach pulls him aside and tells him to just stay down on the ground if he starts feeling too tired during the match. The coach then pushes further and questions Dongman, asking him why he is making everything so complicated, and tells him that if he just gives in, then everyone ends up winning. However, Dongman strongly pushes back and makes it very clear to everyone around him that there is simply no winner in a situation like this, and that his family does not want him to lose under any circumstances. He also makes it clear that he is going to win the gold medal, pay back everything his parents owe, and get his sister Donghee the treatment she needs. As they make their way out, Dongman's father tells him to do whatever it takes to win, and Dongman responds with full confidence, making it clear that losing is not something he is planning on doing. It turns out that Dongman's opponent in the upcoming match is none other than Taksu, and Taksu's family had come to Dongman's father before the fight, offering him money if Dongman just loses to their son this one time. Dongman's father reacts with complete rage, cursing them out and kicking them straight out of his house without even thinking twice about it. When the fight between Taksu and Dongman finally kicks off, Dongman takes charge right from the start by landing a powerful kick on Taksu, who is already having a really hard time keeping up with him. Dongman then pulls off a smooth 360 kick that smacks Taksu right across the face and gets the entire crowd fired up. The whole audience breaks out into loud cheering for Dongman, including his little sister Donghee, who is watching from the crowd with a ton of excitement on her face. Somewhere deep inside, Dongman carries a really strong wish to make enough money one day so he can pay for the medical treatment that has the ability to fix Donghee's legs and turn her life around completely. However, because Dongman lets his mind wander away from the fight for just a moment, his opponent wastes no time and takes full advantage of the opening by charging straight at him with everything he has. Shortly after that, Taksu manages to land a powerful kick directly across Dongman's face, sending him crashing hard onto the ground. As Dongman lies there on the floor, his mind drifts away from the fight and toward thoughts of his younger sister and the responsibility he feels to help her get better. He comes to the painful realization that if he is willing to give up this fight and take the loss on purpose, his little sister might actually have a real chance at walking again, because throwing the match is the only way he can get the money he desperately needs from Taksu's wealthy and powerful father. With that heartbreaking decision already made up in his mind, Dongman stays down on the ground completely on purpose, while his sister watches from the crowd and tearfully begs him to stand back up, reminding him of the promise he had made to her that he would never let himself lose. In the end, Taksu is declared the winner of the match, and nearly everyone present, including Dongman's own coach, walks away believing that Dongman simply could not get back up after Taksu barely even touched him. However, a sharp few people in the crowd begin to suspect that it was never a matter of being unable to rise, but rather a deliberate and calculated choice that he made on his own. Not long after the match, the police manage to trace a suspicious payment back to Dongman, and word spreads quickly through everyone around as people begin gossiping about how Dongman is likely going to face a permanent disqualification for accepting money to lose the fight on purpose. When Taksu finds out about the investigation and the disciplinary action being taken, he explodes with rage and angrily tells Dongman that he should go face the press himself, since Dongman is the entire reason why Taksu is now being dragged into serious trouble and facing consequences of his own. Hearing that, the other guys also get mad at Taksu for planning this scheme and how he ruined Dongman's future. Dongman then apologizes to his coach for everything he has done, but the coach says that he should have come to him first, and what was he thinking making a complete fool of his own coach. Dongman then tells the coach that he don't need him to get sucked into this, as it's all over for his gym if his face gets out of there. He also tells the coach that he can go there alone, but the coach asks him what happens next. The Kaok knows that Dongman is going to take the blame for everything and let them chew him out. The coach then takes his hand and gets him to move outside to face the press together. Back in the present, Dongman exits the arena and makes his way over to where Taksu is standing. Taksu spots him right away and immediately starts accusing him of showing up just to take advantage of his fame and try to get something out of him. A man dressed in a black suit steps in and quietly warns Taksu to watch how he acts, reminding him that plenty of people around them are paying attention to everything going on. Dongman calmly explains that someone had given him a ticket to be there, but Taksu refuses to let up and keeps treating Dongman with complete disrespect, threatening to keep beating him down if he kept hanging around like that. Things then take a much worse turn when Taksu goes too far and begins mocking Dongman's younger sister in a cruel and disrespectful way. The moment those words leave Taksu's mouth, Dongman loses his temper completely and launches a powerful roundhouse kick right across Taksu's face, sending a clear message. He even tells Taksu to study the move carefully if he ever hopes to throw a kick even half as good as that one. Before walking away, Dongman leaves Taksu with one final and serious warning, making it crystal clear that if the two of them ever end up facing each other inside the ring, Taksu will not be walking out of there in one piece. Later that night, Dongman calls his senior from work, who is already furious at him for not getting his work done on time. Dongman apologizes and begs him to just let it go this one time. However, right in the middle of that stressful phone call, Dongman takes a moment to think about everything he has been going through lately, and in what feels like a sudden but deeply felt decision, He tells his senior plainly that he is done and wants to quit the job right then and there. His boss completely loses it after hearing this, snapping back at him that he cannot just up and quit like that, and warning him that throwing away this job means he will probably never find another one anywhere else. Just then, Dongman's coach shows up out of nowhere and tell him that he has basically broken the internet with everything going on around him. Feeling a fresh and powerful sense of direction after hearing that, Dongman tells his coach with complete seriousness that he is ready to grab every opportunity that comes his way and that his one true goal now is to fully commit to learning mixed martial arts. Meanwhile, Era is walking down the street when she spots a digital photo shop with a sign advertising professional headshots for news anchors. However, she walks straight inside and tells the photographer that she wants one of those anchor headshots done for herself. She settles into the spot in front of the camera so he can get a proper shot. While setting everything up, the photographer casually asks her whether she is a news anchor or a flight attendant, explaining that there is a slight but important difference in how he takes each type of photo, and that his gut is telling him she is a news anchor. Era lights up completely upon hearing that and enthusiastically tells him to go all out and make her look like the most professional news anchor he has ever photographed. On the other side of things, Sulhee and Juman are both present at a company dinner along with the rest of their colleagues. Sulhee, who happens to be remarkably skilled at grilling, takes it upon herself to help everyone at the table with the food, and the senior at their table officially puts her in charge of handling all the cooking, making it clear to everyone else that nobody should dare touch the meat while she is managing it. Things at the dinner take an interesting turn when Yejin, a brand new intern who has just recently joined the company, suddenly makes her appearance at the gathering, and almost every single person at the table lights up with excitement and enthusiasm upon seeing her, with the notable exception of Sulhee, whose reaction is noticeably less warm and welcoming compared to everyone else. A little later, away from the dinner table and inside the bathroom, Juman pulls the senior aside and carefully points out to him that making women feel uncomfortable at company gatherings like this one can actually land a person in some very serious trouble these days. Rather than taking that warning seriously, the senior brushes it off entirely and instead turns the conversation around by asking Juman whether he currently has a girlfriend. He then goes on to strongly encourage Juman to pursue Yejin and try to win her over, casually dropping the very significant detail that her family happens to own and run an enormously successful and large restaurant chain. The senior also adds that Yejin already seems to have developed some kind of interest in Juman, which causes Juman to shift uncomfortably in place before responding that he would have to think about the whole situation carefully before deciding anything. Elsewhere, Era finally receives the official photograph of herself in her role as a news anchor, and the joy and excitement she feels in that moment is simply impossible for her to hold back. After that, Mubin comes to meet with Era, who gets surprised to see him. He then starts to get freaky again, saying he really wanted to see her again. He also mentions that he can't stop thinking about her and asks her if she would at least let him drive her home. Era agrees after seeing him begging to her nonstop. In the meantime, Juman and Sulhee are eating at a company dinner, where a guy mentions that Sulhee and another girl sitter beside her gives off the same vibe. Juman feels that the manager should not say something like that, and to take revenge, he throws one of his shoes in the dustbin. On the other hand, Mubin drops off Era to her place and she tells him that he really didn't have to drive her all the way home as the station itself would have been fine. Mubin says that he wanted to make sure she is safely back home. At that moment, Dongman runs straight towards Era and hugs her tightly, saying he finally quit that dust mite company. He also tells her that he finally realized he needs to do what he wants and now he is going to do MMA. Mubin then gets jealous and hits Dongman with his car door, asking him what he is doing. After that, the three of them eats ramen together where Dongman flexed that he had standards in high school, as he wasn't friends with just anyone. Mubin replies that he didn't hang out with useless people either, and Era gets furious and tells them to stop arguing with each other. Mubin continues to shamelessly flirt with Era while simultaneously throwing insults and talking badly about Dongman right in front of everyone sitting there. This causes Dongman to lose his patience and get genuinely angry at both of them, and he threatens Era by asking whether she would like him to go straight to her father and reveal everything about how she has been casually inviting random guys over to her place. Era, unbothered by the tension in the room, turns her attention back to Mubin and questions why he is even still there, especially considering that he cannot afford to stretch his breakout for much longer without it becoming a serious problem. Mubin honestly admits to her that if he delays going back any further, there is a real possibility that he could actually lose his job over it. Despite that, Era keeps her response calm and casual, suggesting to him that the two of them can simply plan to share a meal together on another day and that for now he should just go ahead and leave before things get worse for him. However, Mubin refuses to take the easy way out and instead confesses in a dramatic and over-the-top manner that he thinks about Era no fewer than 50 times throughout every single day, which is exactly why he could not bring himself to wait any longer before seeing her. He then pushes things even further by asking her whether she happens to be free the following day, explaining that he wants to take her out on a full and completely romantic date that would last the entire day from start to finish. The moment those words leave Mubin's mouth, Dongman has heard more than enough and decides to take action by grabbing Era's chair and dragging it firmly over toward himself, making it very obvious to Mubin without saying much that it is time for him to turn around and go straight back home. Over on the other side of things, Juman and Solhi are spending some time together and hanging out, casually chatting about how Solhi somehow still has enough room left in her stomach for ice cream even after putting away all that barbecue earlier. Solhi laughs it off and explains that she never really got a proper chance to eat much during the barbecue since she was stuck being the one doing all the cooking the entire time, so she felt like she deserved to go all out and treat herself just this once. While they are talking, Juman suddenly notices a small drop of ice cream that has landed on her shirt, and he reaches over and gently tries to wipe it off for her. He also takes a moment to ask her why she always seems to show up in her uniform everywhere, wondering out loud whether her workplace actually restricts her from wearing regular everyday clothes. Solhi sets the record straight and tells him that she is completely free to wear whatever she wants, which prompts Juman to ask her why she chooses not to dress up in nicer and more stylish outfits then. She explains honestly that keeping up with that kind of wardrobe would mean needing at least 2 or 3 different outfits every single week, and that pulling something like that together on a regular basis would be really difficult and stressful for her to manage. Without missing a beat, Juman tells her not to worry about any of that because he is more than willing to buy those clothes for her himself, and he points out that she had been sneaking glances at a really nice dress displayed in the shop window right behind her. He tells her enthusiastically that he wants to gift her that outfit and practically whisks her straight into the shop before she can argue. Once inside, Solhi tries the dress on and steps out looking so absolutely stunning that she puts even Bella Hadid to shame. The shopkeeper tells her that the dress looks so much beautiful on her. However, when Solhi looks at the price tag, she gets nervous and says that it's not nice for her. Despite that, Juman notices that she likes the suit and only saying that because it's too expensive. Juman decides to buy the dress for her, and then they leave the shop. On their way out, Solhi keeps telling him that they should return this as it's too much expensive for her to wear. Juman then loses his cool and starts shouting that she should at least buy something expensive for herself for once and even ask him to buy things for her. He also says that he knows she had to watch her pennies these last 6 years and it's because she supported him while he was trying to get a decent job. He also tells Hire that he is really grateful for that but it's suffocating him right now. Upon hearing what he said, Solhi quickly spins around and jumps into the nearest taxi, leaving him standing there completely alone. Meanwhile, on the other side of the neighborhood, Mubin pulls up to drop Era off, and she cannot seem to stop herself from waving goodbye to him over and over again with a big smile on her face. Not wanting Mubin to find out exactly where Era lives, Dongman makes the quick decision to take her over to his place instead. Shortly after, the two of them end up on the rooftop together, where Era wastes no time asking him why he is throwing away his job and suddenly wanting to pursue MMA out of nowhere. Dongman tells her honestly that he felt genuinely happy and free the moment he quit that boring and miserable job and made up his mind to do MMA, but then she came along and completely ruined the good mood he was in. He then tries his best to make her understand that MMA is not simply about beating people up and leaving them with black eyes, as she seems to believe. Era fires back at him that he walked away from Taekwondo more than a decade ago, which means he is going to get absolutely destroyed the moment he steps foot inside the ring again. Dongman pushes back and tells her with quiet confidence that even if he does return to competing, things are not going to play out nearly as badly as she is imagining in her head. Despite his reassurances, Era becomes visibly emotional that she simply cannot bear the thought of watching him get hurt. Dongman then looks at her and asks her directly whether the real reason she does not want him to pursue MMA is simply because she is genuinely worried about him, but Era immediately tries to brush that suggestion off and deny it. She clarifies that she never once used the word worried and that all she is saying is that she does not want to watch him come home all beaten up and roughed up from fights. She then tries to drive her point home by asking him how he would feel if his beloved dog Becky came trotting back home one day completely battered and in bad shape, but that comparison backfires on her immediately when Dongman gets genuinely offended and snaps at her for having the nerve to put him in the same category as a dog. Era stands her ground and tells him that discovering someone had beaten up a person you care about hits just as hard as finding out someone had hurt your dog, and that the two situations are really not all that different when it comes down to the feelings involved. She then tops everything off by instructing him to start looking for a new job first thing tomorrow morning without any more delays or excuses. Then, in a move that nobody was quite expecting, Dongman suddenly reaches out and pulls her closer toward him, creating an uncomfortable shift in the atmosphere between the two of them. He then asks her to just stay right there with him for a few more seconds so that the two of them can actually have a proper and peaceful conversation. He then tells her to forget all about that planned date with Mubin and to just stay and spend the time here with him instead. Era then asks him why he even followed them to the noodle place, and he says that it was because he was hungry and she knows he loved noodles. Era also asks him why it bothers him so much who she chooses to date or not, and he asks her if she wants him not to interfere in her life. Era reaches out and gently grabs his face with both hands, looking him straight in the eyes and telling him that he probably has absolutely no clue what she is even talking about, but that in the world of adults, there is really only one explanation for why a person behaves the way he just did. After saying that, Era turns around and walks away, leaving Dongman standing there alone while she strolls off quietly wondering to herself whether Dongman is somehow going through a late puberty. But then, almost out of nowhere, something shifts inside her and she suddenly finds herself getting butterflies in her stomach, and a warm blush begins creeping across her cheeks as thoughts of Dongman unexpectedly start filling up her mind. The following day, Solhee pulls on the brand new dress that Juman had bought for her and studies herself carefully in the mirror, coming to the conclusion that it makes her look a little on the shorter side. Juman, upon seeing her in the outfit, immediately switches into his usual flirty and slightly odd mode, telling her that she really should not be wearing something like that out in public because it does far too good a job of showing off her gorgeous curves for his comfort. Solhee is completely unbothered by his comments and simply tells him to back off and leave her alone, still clearly carrying some leftover frustration and annoyance from whatever had happened between them the night before. Elsewhere, and completely separate from all of that, Hiren finally manages to track down and locate the place where Dongman has been living. Hiren then looks around and thinks that the area looks more shabbier than she thought. She even thinks that it looks like one of those rundown areas they see in movies. Hiren then asks a construction guy working there if all the apartments here are for rent. She continues to say that this neighborhood is so out of the way that it looks there's hardly any security around this kind of area. When the construction person takes off the mask, it turns out she is a woman that surprises Hiren. The woman asks Hiren if she is looking for a room here even though she is wearing at least 10 grand on her. The woman also reveals that she is the owner of this place, and Hiren gets embarrassed to hear that. The woman bluntly tells Hiren that she does not take pretty girls seriously because in her experience they tend to be a complete handful and their entire lives are usually just one big mess after another. After dropping that harsh observation, the woman turns and walks away, leaving Hiren standing there seething with irritation and privately thinking to herself that the woman is an absolute and total weirdo. Right at that moment, Solhee and Juman happen to be walking by in the area and both of them freeze in their tracks and look completely shocked upon spotting Hiren standing there. While Hiren seems to already know who Solhee is, Juman does not appear to have any idea who Hiren is at all. Hiren casually suggests to the two of them that they should probably get moving since it looked like they had somewhere important to be and were in a bit of a rush. She then turns her attention back to the door and reaches out to press the doorbell, but before her finger can even make contact with it, Solhee suddenly bursts into action and physically blocks the doorbell with her whole body while screaming Era's name at the top of her lungs. It does not take long before Era comes stepping out of her house and looks at Hiren with a sharp expression, demanding to know what exactly she is doing showing up there. Hiren fires back with an attitude, saying she has every right to go wherever she pleases and turning the tables on Era by demanding to know why she had lied to her about Dongman supposedly being married. Hiren then starts behaving in a strange and cutting way, expressing her disbelief out loud that Era is still trailing around after Dongman at their age, and comparing her to an annoying and stubborn leech that absolutely refuses to let go no matter what. Upon hearing what Hiren says, Era gets completely fired up and furiously demands to know whether she actually thinks that Dongman is nothing more than some kind of backup option that she can fall back on whenever things do not work out for her elsewhere. When Hiren casually confirms that yes, she does see him as exactly that kind of backup, Era absolutely loses it and gets so worked up that she very nearly rolls up her sleeves and gets ready to physically confront her right then and there. At that exact moment, all the loud noise and commotion outside manages to wake Dongman up from his sleep, and he stumbles out of his house to see what is going on, only to find Hiren standing right there directly in front of him. Hiren wastes no time and immediately pulls out her best performance, forcing fake tears into her eyes and turning to face him with a soft and innocent expression, sweetly asking him how he has been doing all this time. Era is having absolutely none of it and shouts over to Dongman, warning him loudly that Hiren is putting on a complete act with those crocodile tears and urging him to send her away without giving her a single second of his time. As it turns out, the history between Dongman and Hiren stretches all the way back to the period when he was away serving his mandatory military service, during which time she had coldly dumped him and moved on to another guy without much hesitation. Then, on the very day that Dongman was finally discharged and returned home, Hiren had shown up again out of nowhere and come crawling back to him, and the two of them had ended up stuck in an exhausting on and off relationship for quite a stretch of time after that. Hiren then tells Dongman that she should be going now and asks him if he can take her calls once in a while. However, Dongman doesn't say anything that even surprises Sulhee and Juman, who wonders why he is not speaking. Right before she leaves, Era tells her that she should know that she is not a pushover like Dongman, and always going to be right there. Hiren replies that she should really learn when it's not her place to speak, but Era smashes her chest, saying she can speak whenever she wants. Era makes her position absolutely crystal clear to Hiren by telling her straight up that if she is even thinking about getting anywhere near Dongman, she is going to have to get through her first before that happens. Once Hiren is gone and things settle down, Era is left standing there by herself quietly wondering what on earth is actually going through Dongman's head these days. A little later, Era finds herself thinking about whether Dongman is seriously considering getting back together with Hiren and starting things up with her all over again, but while she is absent-mindedly scrolling through her phone, she stumbles across a news article talking about Dongman and the moment he laid into Taksu. Sometime after that, Dongman's coach pulls up to the neighborhood in his vehicle to come and collect Dongman, and Dongman tells him that he really did not need to go out of his way and do all of this just for him. The coach immediately brushes that aside and asks Dongman whether he has any real idea just how much intense and grueling work is actually waiting ahead of them now that he has officially committed to training, particularly if he is seriously aiming to make his debut by next year. The coach then urges him to stop standing around and get moving so they can get going without wasting any more time, but Dongman looks at him curiously and asks why he seems to be in such a particular hurry to leave. The coach then admits that he had figured out for himself that the girl who walks around with a microphone, the one named Era, happens to live right here in this very neighborhood, and that the two of them absolutely need to get out of there before she shows up and catches them. At that moment, Era comes storming over completely furious at Dongman for getting into a street fight with some random guy right in the middle of the road and making it even worse by letting the whole thing end up plastered all over the internet for everyone to see. Dongman nervously starts looking around for his coach, clearly hoping that he would step in and bail him out of the situation somehow, but the coach wants absolutely nothing to do with what is about to happen and instead sneaks behind a nearby van to hide himself from Era's line of sight. Era rounds on Dongman and demands to know whether he has taken up beating people up as a hobby now or whether he is seriously considering joining some kind of gang. Dongman tries to defend himself by telling her that he has simply made the decision to stop holding back and start truly living his life, and that the path of martial arts is exactly the direction he has chosen to go in. The moment those words leave his mouth, Era's eyes drift over toward the coach and everything suddenly clicks into place as she figures out exactly who has been planting all of these ideas into Dongman's head. She immediately turns her fury toward the coach and tears into him for using his smooth and persuasive talking to lure Dongman into pursuing MMA without thinking about the consequences. Meanwhile, Tak-soo is sitting down with someone and discussing the controversy that has been swirling around him ever since his recent run-in with Dongman. The person he is talking to informs him that the public has been growing louder in their calls for a proper rematch between him and Dongman to settle things once and for all. Tak-soo brushes the whole idea off, saying that calling it a real match would be a stretch when his supposed opponent is just some hothead who gets into random brawls out on the street. Meanwhile, Dongman gets furious hear everything on TV, and tells his coach that he wants to beat this guy no matter what. At that moment, a man named Tae-hee from Tiger MMA enters the gym. Meanwhile, Era is busy on her computer submitting an anchor application to a completely different company this time around, quietly hoping with everything she has that things will work out in her favor on this attempt. When the screen prompts her with a confirmation asking whether she is truly sure about her decision to apply, she does not hesitate for even a fraction of a second and slams her finger down on the enter button with full conviction, telling herself firmly that she is absolutely not going to let this opportunity slip through her fingers the way others have before. Right at that moment, one of her seniors walks into the room and she instantly snaps the laptop shut in a panic, since the computer she had been using actually belongs to the company and she had no business using it for personal matters. The senior walks over and hands her an energy drink, which immediately catches her off guard and makes her raise an eyebrow with curiosity as she asks him what exactly the special occasion is for this unexpected gesture. The senior explains that he has genuinely been feeling terrible about how things turned out with the broadcasting job she went for, admitting that he truly believed she was going to land it without any problems. Era responds by telling him that it is fine and that what is done, but then adds that if he really feels that bad about the whole situation, then he can make it up to her by doing her a small favor. She tells him that she has heard through the grapevine that he happens to be good friends with the manager over at the security team, and she asks him whether he would be willing to introduce the two of them. The senior shifts uncomfortably upon hearing this rather unexpected request and feels the need to point out to her that the man she is asking about is already a married guy. Later on, Era takes matters into her own hands and goes directly to speak with someone from the security team herself, making a strong case for Dongman by pointing out that he holds an impressive 5th-degree black belt in Taekwondo and would be a genuinely valuable addition to their team. She continues to tell him that he can be a little dense at times, but he's got a good heart and he can seem clueless, but that's because he's honest. The senior hearing that wonders if she is complimenting him or dissing him. Era further tells them that Dongman is not only a good fighter but he is also really good looking that will boost the department store's image. The security guy tells her to have him come in for the interview, and the senior tells him that he owe one to Era here, so he should just give him the job. The security guy then says that he is going to give Dongman a job based on recommendation. It turns out, while Era is busy talking to them, the one in the office rings that there is a theft report in first floor in luxury goods department. On the other hand, Tae-hee gives a RFC amateur competition application form to Dongman, saying they should get him debuted tomorrow. Hearing that, Dongman gets a bit nervous and thinks that it's too soon. The guy tells him that if he don't debut tomorrow, he never will. The coach then tells the guy to quit talking nonsense and just say what he actually wants to say. The guy goes on to explain that Tak-soo has been quietly and deliberately cutting off all of his routes and opportunities from behind the scenes without him even knowing, and that Tak-soo's father essentially has his hands in every corner of the entire industry as its primary financial backer and sponsor. He also reveals that they have been throwing their money around and pulling strings left and right, and that if things keep going in this direction, there will not be a single venue in the whole of Seoul or even in the most remote and out-of-the-way places outside the city that will be willing to let him compete anymore. The guy then gets personal and openly admits that he himself used to work as Tak-soo's waiter at the private club Tak-soo regularly frequented, and that he spent a good couple of years cleaning up after him and watching everything that went on, which means he managed to pick up some very valuable and potentially damaging secrets about Tak-soo along the way. He then leans in and tells Dongman seriously that the match scheduled for tomorrow is the one and only opportunity he still has left to work with before he completely runs out of options, and he asks Dongman directly and passionately whether he is willing to join forces with him and help bring Tak-soo crashing all the way down. The coach steps in at that point and firmly tells the guy that they simply cannot afford to throw everything they have on the line for the sake of a single match tomorrow, reminding him that he carries full responsibility for Dongman's well-being and future. Before the guy gets up and walks out, he slides his business card across to Dongman, who looks interested. Meanwhile, Era sends Dongman a text asking whether he is planning on stopping by her department store later, but he does not even entertain the idea for a second and shoots her down with a flat and immediate refusal. Over at the department store, Era's security team is still deep in the middle of their investigation into the woman who had made off with several expensive luxury items. After going back through the security footage on the CCTV cameras, they manage to piece together that the woman still has the stolen bags on her, and there is a strong possibility that she has not even left the building yet and is still somewhere inside the department store. A little while after that, Dongman unexpectedly shows up at the department store anyway despite his earlier refusal, and Era wastes no time telling him to stop messing around and make his way straight up to the 9th floor security room. Dongman pushes back and tells her that his path is MMA and that there is simply no version of his life where he ends up working at a place like this. He then turns her own words right back around on her and reminds her of the time she got completely lost in her own daydreams right after doing the store broadcast, and how she had stood there saying out loud that people ought to be out there doing what they truly love in life. Dongman then tells her with complete seriousness that he refuses to spend the rest of his life running endlessly on a hamster wheel going nowhere, and that he would much rather throw himself into something wild and meaningful like MMA instead. Right at that moment, Era's eyes snap to the CCTV monitor and she immediately recognizes the very same woman who had stolen the luxury items casually strolling through the store as if nothing ever happened. Without hesitating for even a breath, Era takes off after her and approaches her with the most relaxed and friendly expression she can pull together, greeting her warmly and asking whether she is enjoying her shopping experience with them today. She even asks the women if by any chance their products mistakenly slip into her bag there, and the woman drops all the things to prove that she is not a theft. The woman casually shoves her bag further ahead and then has the nerve to instruct Era to get down and pick up all the items that had scattered onto the floor and put them back inside her bag for her. While Era is crouched down gathering everything up off the ground, the woman looks around and asks her whether she happens to spot any kind of watch down there among the fallen items, and it is at that exact moment that Era realizes with a jolt that she had never once mentioned anything about a watch to this woman at any point during their interaction. The moment those words register in Era's mind, the woman begins visibly fidgeting and growing nervous, instinctively reaching up and trying to adjust her hat in a way that comes across as suspicious. Seizing on that reaction immediately, Era reaches forward and snatches the hat right off the woman's head, and sure enough, hidden underneath it is the very gold watch that the woman had stolen. Later on, the woman wastes absolutely no time in flexing her influence and pulling on her connections to turn the whole situation around, using her power to come down hard on Era and paint her as the one in the wrong for having the audacity to accuse her of theft. The woman also has the boldness to claim that she had always fully intended to circle back and pay for the watch at some point later on, and on top of that she accuses Era of having physically manhandled her in a completely unacceptable way despite all of that. Era opens her mouth and tries to defend herself and push back against these accusations, but her senior quickly cuts her off and firmly tells her to keep quiet and just apologize to the woman without making things any worse. When Era delivers the apology, the woman asks her what she thinks she can possibly do to make things right. After a little while, the woman and the senior both head out of the room together, and just as Era is also making her way out, the woman turns back to her and tells her that she ought to consider herself lucky because she is such a wonderfully generous and good person for letting things go the way she did. Meanwhile, Dongman happens to glance down and notices angry red marks on Era's knees, and it does not take him more than a second to put together exactly what that means and realize that she had been forced down onto her knees in front of that woman as part of her apology. The moment that realization hits him, Dongman's blood absolutely boils with fury, and he grabs Era and pulls her away from the situation before snatching the woman's hat right out of his hands and hurling it straight at her. Dongman then makes it clear to everyone standing there that Era will not be setting foot in this place to work ever again starting from tomorrow, and he demands to know whether they actually believe they have the right to humiliate and force someone into doing things like this simply because they hand her a pathetically small paycheck every month. He then steers Era away from everything and leads her out to the parking lot, where Era rounds on him and asks him why he would just throw away her source of income like that without even thinking it through. Dongman fires right back and asks her plainly whether she genuinely still wants to keep working in a place that treats her the way they just did. Era responds by saying that she will just do what she has always done and push all of it down deep inside herself and put on a smile like everything is perfectly fine. But then, without any warning, her eyes begin filling up with tears, and before she can even try to hold herself together, Dongman steps forward and wraps his arms around her. Later that night, Juman is out having dinner with Yejin while Sulhee is back at home waiting for him to show up, completely unaware of where he actually is or what he is doing. Then, in what turns out to be terrible timing, Sulhee decides to surprise him by showing up at his workplace with a late-night snack she had prepared for him, only to be stopped cold in her tracks when she walks in and finds him sitting there laughing and chatting away happily with Yejin as though he does not have a care in the world. Before Sulhee can even fully process what she is looking at, Yejin happens to turn around and notice her standing there, and rather than picking up on the obvious tension in the air, she cheerfully points out that the two of them are basically wearing the exact same hoodie, as if that is the most interesting thing happening in the room. Yejin then wraps things up quickly and excuses herself, mentioning that she has a ride waiting for her outside. The moment Yejin is gone and out of sight, Sulhee steps forward without saying much and quietly hands the food she brought over to Juman, and then turns right back around and walks away with anger written all over her face, the hurt hitting her so hard that tears begin streaming down her cheeks before she even makes it back to the elevator. On their way back home together, Era's phone buzzes and she looks down to find a text message from her landlord reminding her that her rent is still overdue and needs to be taken care of, which piles even more stress and frustration on top of everything she is already feeling in that moment. She turns to Dongman and tells him through gritted teeth that if the two of them end up out on the streets with nowhere to go, every single bit of it is going to be completely his fault. Dongman tries to lighten the mood and tells her not to stress about it because he has a plan to take care of everything, and that plan involves letting her take on the role of being his agent. He goes on to explain that being a sports agent is actually a genuinely legitimate and respectable career position, but Era is having absolutely none of it and shoots back at him asking whether he seriously thinks that some ridiculous and half-baked offer like that is somehow supposed to make her feel better after he just got her fired from her job. On top of everything else, Dongman then cheerfully suggests that the two of them should go out and grab a drink together to celebrate the fact that they are both now officially unemployed, but Era shuts that idea down immediately and flatly refuses without even entertaining it for a second. Dongman refuses to drop it and trails after her the entire way back to her house, repeatedly asking her over and over again why she will not just come along with him. Then a thought suddenly crosses his mind and he begins to suspect that she might already have plans to meet up with Mubin the following day. Dongman then asks her what she is going to do with him, and she says that they will do all sorts of things which he doesn't even know about. She then smashes him bum, saying his small brain is not going to understand anything either. Before she could leave, Dongman smashes her runs back to his house. Meanwhile, Juman receives a call on his phone, and Sulhee decides to check it out. To her surprise, it's Yejin asking him out on a date for library day and even movie. At that moment, Juman leaves the bathroom and grabs his phone. Sulhee tells him that they should take a selfie stick to the firework festival on Saturday as her blog followers are wondering why she haven't posted anything in a while. She also asks him whether she should go ahead and wear the dress he bought for her since she is genuinely looking forward to watching the fireworks together with him. Juman tells her casually that she can wear absolutely whatever she feels comfortable in, but almost immediately after that Sulhee's enthusiasm begins to waver and she starts second-guessing whether going is even a good idea in the first place. She tells him that if he is going to be too caught up with things, then maybe the two of them should just skip it altogether and not bother going, and right on cue Juman chimes in and mentions that he might actually end up having to go into work on Saturday after all. Sulhee is genuinely caught off guard by that and looks at him with wide eyes, quietly hoping deep down that he is not just making up some excuse and feeding her a lie to get out of their plans. Juman goes on to explain that there are some important presentations coming up at work that he has to deal with, and that on top of that there is a particular intern at the office who keeps coming to him and asking for his help with things constantly. He also throws in that he has been promised a steak dinner in return for all the help he has been putting in, and adds that this intern is honestly not the most pleasant person to deal with and has been a real headache and a pain to be around. Hearing all of that actually lifts Sulhee's spirits and puts a happy smile back on her face, but that happiness comes to a screeching halt the moment Juman casually drops the name Chanho, and Solhi suddenly realizes with a sinking feeling that he had not been talking about Yejin this entire time but rather about some guy named Chanho. Meanwhile, Era is getting herself all dolled up with the help of a stylist while Dongman hovers nearby keeping a close and clearly uncomfortable eye on everything that is going on. The stylist makes cheerful small talk and asks Era if she must be buzzing with excitement about her upcoming date, to which Era plays it down and responds that it is nothing that serious and that the two of them are really just going to grab something to eat and maybe catch a movie afterward. Era then picks up a bottle of perfume and begins enthusiastically spraying it all over herself, which immediately gets under Dongman's skin and visibly irritates him, prompting him to ask her why on earth she feels the need to drench herself in the stuff like that. The stylist advises Era to make sure she sprays on a little more once she has finished getting changed into her outfit. Dongman then completely loses his cool and tells Era that she had better be back home no later than 8 o'clock, and that if she so much as thinks about staying out past that time, he is going to pick up the phone and call her father and report to him that she was spraying perfume all over her chest and refusing to come home at a decent hour. Hearing that, Era reaches over and picks up her lipstick, and she thinks that their dear Dongman is seriously in need of being put back in his place, and she makes up her mind right then and there to teach him a lesson he will not forget. A little while later, Mubin finally pulls up to come and pick her up, and Dongman stands there seething with barely contained fury as he watches Mubin drive away with the person he has come to realize is the love of his life. When they finally arrive, Mubin glances at his phone as he was reading about how girls really fall for guys who are good at reversing. He then quickly puts his hand on the wheel, and right hand on the back of her seat. To his surprise, he mistakenly put his hand over Era's head instead of the back of the seat and she thinks that he has a unique way of backing up. On the other hand, Solhi and Juman are sitting at the bus stop. Juman's phone starts ringing, and Solhi tells him to check it, but he says that it's the office group chat so he can check it later when he is at work. Solhi asks him whether that Chanho guy is also part of their group chat and tells him that she wants to have a word with him herself the next time she runs into him at the office. She makes it clear that she intends to sit him down and tell him straight up that he needs to start carrying his own weight and stop dumping all his problems onto Juman all the time. Just at that moment, the bus rolls up to the stop and Solhi hops on and heads off without another word. Later at the office, Yejin sidles up to Juman and asks him whether he had gotten around to reading the messages she had sent him earlier, and he confirms that he saw them and agrees to help her get through her presentation. Yejin lights up at that and tells him that she is going to take him out for a really nice dinner afterward as her way of thanking him for all his help, but Juman quickly deflects the suggestion and proposes that they should just eat together inside the office instead of going anywhere. That response lands like a cold splash of water on Yejin, and she pulls back feeling genuinely hurt by it, announcing that she has decided she is just going to tackle the presentation completely on her own from this point forward. She then admits quietly to herself that watching him deliberately keep this kind of careful distance between them is somehow having the opposite effect on her and is actually making her feelings for him grow even stronger than before. Then, throwing all caution aside entirely, Yejin suddenly closes the gap between them and kisses him directly before pulling back and telling him plainly and boldly that she wants to be his girlfriend. Over on the other side of things, Solhi is sitting there repeatedly sending texts to Juman and growing increasingly anxious with every passing minute that he is not writing back to her. She eventually decides to stop waiting around and makes her way over to the area where Juman works. Once she gets there, she accidentally ends up overhearing Yejin in the middle of asking Juman out on a date, and the sight of it hits Solhi like a punch to the stomach as she stands there completely frozen and shocked that another girl is boldly pursuing her own boyfriend right in front of her eyes. What makes it even worse is that she notices Juman's cheeks turning red, and she cannot help but wonder to herself why on earth he is sitting there blushing like that. Juman quickly composes himself and tells Yejin that he is going to act as though he did not hear what she just said, reminding her that they are at work and that what she just did is highly unprofessional and completely out of line. He then tells her clearly that he does not want to hear another word about it and offers a calm apology in case anything he had done along the way gave her the wrong idea and caused her to misread his intentions toward her. With that, Juman gets up and walks away from the situation entirely, and the moment he is gone Solhi finally lets out a long breath of relief, feeling a wave of reassurance wash over her as she thinks to herself that she always knew without a doubt that Juman would never do something like cheat on her. At that very same time across town, Dongman is putting in serious and intense work at the gym as he trains for MMA, and his performance is so impressive and sharp that he manages to genuinely catch his coach off guard and leave him surprised at just how strong his skill set really is. The coach tells him that he not only has to punch but also to kick him. The coach then tells him that it's enough for punches, and they should move on to groundwork. Dongman then wonders if Era is still hanging out with Mubin, and asks the coach if he can leave early today. The coach gets surprised to hear that and says that they don't have a moment to lose if they are gonna get him in shape again. At that moment, Taksu alongside his coach and Dongman and his coach gets furious to see them. Taksu then says that he heard Taehi paid them a visit and to him like Dongman wants to cook something up with that guy. Dongman's coach turns to Taksu and asks him directly whether he has shown up here looking to start trouble and tells him that if that is the case then the two of them should just turn around and walk right back out. Taksu's own coach then steps in and addresses everyone in the room, pointing out that they all already know deep down that absolutely nothing good is going to come out of Dongman getting himself tangled up with Taksu in any capacity. He goes on to add that it is not going to do either side any favors if people out there start poking around and digging up everything that happened in the past all over again, and he also mentions that Taksu's father carries a genuine sense of guilt and responsibility over what Dongman went through because of everything that unfolded back then. He then lays out a proposal on behalf of Taksu's father, revealing that he wants to make things right by offering Dongman a comfortable position at a managerial level within his distribution company. Taksu then says that Dongman has already gotten plenty out of him as it is, and then sinks to a disgusting new low by bringing up Dongman's sister in the most cruel and mocking way possible, suggesting that his sister only ever had a shot at getting surgery in the first place because of him. That pushes Dongman completely over the edge and he steps forward and warns Taksu that if even one more word comes out of his mouth, he is not going to be walking out of this place in one piece. Dongman's coach shouts at Dongman to get himself together and stop before things escalate any further. Sometime later, Dongman receives a text from Taehi, saying it's almost time for his debut to the amateur league. Thinking about everything that Taksu said earlier, Dongman asks him if he is positive that this will turn the tables his way. On the other hand, Era is sitting at an expensive restaurant with Mubin, and she gets scared to see the menu. She wonders what they are selling here, and she even tells Mubin that he paid for the movie, and even drove her around all day, so she should get this bill for the food. Mubin says that he already told her that he would treat her a romantic date and this place is on the expensive side. He says that she should treat him a pizza or something casual next time and let him afford this. Dongman then asks her if he make her uncomfortable and asks if it really matter who pays. He also says that it's perfectly normal to want to do everything for the person they like. He also says that he likes her a lot and he wants to make her feel comfortable. Era notices that he's clenching his hands like he's nervous and he can't even meet his gaze, which is hard to deny that Mubin really is serious about her. Era then happily tells him that she will let him treat her for the day and this could be the start of something good. The following day, Dongman's coach fills him in and lets him know that his opponent for today is going to be a fighter from Brazil. He also reassures him that the guy is a complete rookie with very little experience, which should make things relatively straightforward, and encourages Dongman to loosen up and not overthink things since today is after all his very first debut fight. Dongman then casually mentions to everyone that his manager will be showing up at some point anyway, and the people around him exchange surprised looks upon finding out that he had already gone ahead and locked down a manager even before stepping into the ring for the first time. After that, Dongman pulls out his phone and tries reaching out to Era over text, but his messages sit there without a single response coming back from her. Meanwhile, Era is riding along in the car with Mubin, who is eager to take her to his favorite spot as the next stop on their day together. Despite being physically present in the moment with Mubin, Era finds her thoughts quietly drifting back to Dongman as she finds herself genuinely hoping deep down inside that he is going to be perfectly alright without her there by his side. Back at the venue, Dongman makes his entrance and steps up to the ring, and one of the guys from Taksu's side leans over and points out to him that his opponent looks small and inexperienced and that this fight should be well within his grasp. Once he is up there, Dongman's eyes begin scanning every corner of the crowd around him, quietly searching for Era's face among the sea of people, but no matter where he looks, she is simply nowhere to be found. That night, Mubin leads Era up to a rooftop with his hands gently placed over her eyes the entire way up, and when he finally lifts them away and lets her open her eyes, she is completely taken aback by the breathtaking view spread out in front of her. Mubin tells her that this is exactly what he had been wanting to show her all along, and he reaches into his pocket and presents her with a gift in the form of a beautiful ring. Era takes one look at it and immediately recognizes the brand, realizing right away that what she is holding in her hands is something seriously expensive. Mubin opens up and admits that getting it probably put a significant dent in his credit card, but tells her that every single penny of it was completely worth it if it means he gets to show her just how deeply he feels about her. He then lowers himself down onto one knee and looks up at her with complete sincerity, asking her whether she would be willing to be his girlfriend. Meanwhile, Dongman is still in the thick of his match and is carefully studying every move his opponent makes, trying to get a proper read on him. It becomes increasingly clear to Dongman that he cannot find a single opening to exploit, and that the person standing across from him is definitely not carrying himself like any kind of beginner. He decides that the smartest play is to create some distance between them and then look for the right moment to finish things decisively with a powerful roundhouse kick, but before he can even begin to execute that plan, his opponent launches a punch at him with a speed that is almost impossible to track. The opponent then follows that up by storming forward and unleashing a relentless series of punches at Dongman, who throws everything he has into dodging them as best he can, his mind racing with the growing certainty that the person he is up against is absolutely not the beginner he was told to expect. It slowly dawns on Dongman that Taehi had actually set him up and played him for a fool, and he notices Taehi lurking off to the side with a camera pointed at him, quietly thinking to himself that Dongman is holding up better than he had originally anticipated, but that it would not last much longer. As it turns out, the opponent standing across from Dongman in that ring is far from the harmless rookie he had been made out to be, and is actually a member of one of the top 3 most prestigious families in all of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, on top of being the uncle and personal trainer of the legendary and widely celebrated fighter John Carrillas. Realizing he has been deceived and that he is up against someone of serious caliber, Dongman makes the split-second decision to throw caution to the wind and shift into a full and relentless offensive attack in order to break apart his opponent's rhythm and throw him off balance. He manages to land a solid and powerful hit directly to his opponent's chest, and the impact is enough to send a ripple of nervousness through Taehi, who immediately starts thinking to himself that he is going to have to cut that particular moment out of the footage he is recording before anyone else gets to see it. Shortly after that, Dongman's opponent gathers himself back up and comes charging straight at him with a furious flurry of punches aimed directly at his face without letting up. The assault proves to be too much and Dongman ends up hitting the ground hard, and wasting absolutely no time, Taehi gets straight on the phone with Taksu and tells him with obvious satisfaction that they should go ahead and congratulate Dongman on what appears to be the very swift and unceremonious end of his MMA career. At that exact same moment, Era makes a life-changing decision of her own and tells Mubin that she is ready to accept his proposal. Later that evening, Mubin drives Era back to her neighborhood, and just as he is about to say his goodbyes, Solhi comes sprinting toward Era. She breathlessly tells Era that Dongman is in the hospital right now and that she needs to get there as soon as possible. The two of them rush over to the hospital together without wasting another second, and the moment Era walks in and sets eyes on Dongman lying there in the hospital bed covered in bruises, she completely breaks down and cannot stop the tears from pouring out of her. Dongman stirs awake and immediately tries to lighten the mood by asking her who exactly she is calling ugly, but Era is far too upset to laugh it off and fires back at him furiously for letting himself end up in this terrible state. The coach then pulls out his phone and shows everyone in the room the footage of Dongman taking a brutal and relentless beating from his opponent during the match. On the other hand, Taksu is over at the airport where he has shown up to see the opponent off before his flight. Taksu tells him with a satisfied smirk that he took care of that Dongman situation for him and that he had slipped him a little extra on top of the agreed amount for doing such a thorough job. After sending him off, Taksu gets on the phone with his coach and demands to know why the opponent had been booked into business class for his flight home. The coach explains that he simply had no other option available to him because there was absolutely no way he could put someone with broken ribs into an economy seat on a long-haul flight and expect that to go well. He then shifts the conversation and brings up something that has clearly been sitting with him, pointing out that while someone at the level of Michael Carrillas was never going to lose to a complete rookie like Dongman under any normal circumstances, if Taksu takes a careful look at one particular moment in the footage, he will see that Dongman managed to land a perfectly clean and precise kick on a seasoned professional, which is no small thing. The coach wraps up by emphasizing just how remarkable it actually is that someone with absolutely no professional experience was able to connect a clean hit on a fighter of that caliber. On the other hand, Taksu's coach tells him that it was roundhouse kick, but it broke his ribs and this Dongman's win. Later, the receptionist tells Era that including charges for the ambulance call-out, out-of-hours service, and the ER facility fee will be $250. Era starts shivering while giving her credit card. Era then notices one of the doctor guys walking by as the guy from that night that slapped her. The guy tells Era that Mubin told them she is going out with him. The guy turns to Era and offers her an apology, telling her that they all would have been a lot more careful and considerate around her had they known that the two of them were actually together. He then casually mentions to her that they will be seeing her again the following night, expressing his hope that they can move past the whole awkward situation and start fresh. Era looks at him with a puzzled expression, not quite following what he means, and the guy clarifies that there is a medical event happening the next evening at 6 o'clock that works on a +1 basis, but that Mubin has always shown up to these things completely alone because he has essentially been single for as long as anyone can remember. That night, Era finds herself lying awake thinking about Dongman and quietly worrying about whether he is holding up alright, figuring that losing must have hit him like a freight train considering that winning had always been the only outcome he had ever known before. Before finally drifting off to sleep, Era makes a mental note to herself that she is going to have to put together an especially cute outfit and show up tomorrow to genuinely surprise Mubin with her presence at the event. The next day, Era makes her way to the venue feeling excited and put together, but the person at the entrance stops her and tells her that she will need to come back with her partner and a proper invitation before she can be let in. Era steps back and walks away from the entrance, briefly considering whether she should just call Mubin and let him know she is outside, but before she can even reach for her phone her eyes land on his car parked nearby. When she spins around to get a better look, her stomach drops as she finds Mubin walking in with an entirely different girl by his side. Shortly after, both Mubin and the girl notice Era standing nearby, and the girl curiously asks in Japanese who is Era. Mubin tells her that Era is just a patient from his hospital and that he needs to speak with her about something. He then turns to Era and desperately tries to convince her that everything she has witnessed is a big misunderstanding and that what she saw earlier meant nothing. Era is not convinced though, and she points out that it is clearly not a misunderstanding since the woman had her arm wrapped around his, and she demands that he explain who exactly this woman is to him. Mubin then reluctantly admits that the girl is actually his fiancée, explaining that her father is the chairman of a Japanese hospital that his hospital is affiliated with, and that the two of them are already set to get married the following February in Japan, with a smaller ceremony also planned to take place in Korea. He tries to make it seem less serious by telling Era that once they are married, his fiancée will be heading back to Japan and that they will not even be living in the same country. After saying all of that, he then shifts his attention toward Era and begins telling her how deeply he loves her, even going as far as suggesting that the two of them can continue seeing each other even after he is already married. Hearing that, Era gets furious and hits him with the bag on his face, asking if he is seriously going to keep her when he has a wife. Era slides the ring off her finger that Mubin had given her and flings it away into the open sky without looking back. She also makes it clear to him that he seems to be under the impression that every woman out there is just sitting around desperately waiting for someone to shower them with expensive gifts and grand gestures, but she tells him bluntly that nobody falls for that tired old Cinderella fantasy anymore. Later that night, Era finds herself sitting alone on a nearby bench, turning everything over in her head and thinking about how she had gone through all the trouble of getting dressed up nicely for absolutely nothing, and realizing with a deep and aching feeling that the person she misses the most right now in this moment is Dongman. Just then, Dongman suddenly appears out of nowhere and Era looks up at him in surprise and asks him how he possibly knew that she would be sitting out here. Dongman skips the small talk and cuts straight to asking her with whether Mubin had put his hands on her in any way, but Era shuts that down immediately and tells him that she would never in a million years allow anyone to hit her. He then asks her why she is sitting out here with tears on her face, and she waves it off and tells him it is not worth making a big deal out of, explaining simply that she had agreed to go out with Mubin and then ended things shortly after. Without saying much, Dongman quietly shrugs off his jacket and drapes it over her shoulders, telling her that she did absolutely nothing wrong in any of this. Era then suddenly snaps at him for no apparent reason, but she admits to herself that every single time he does something like that, her heart cannot help but race inside her chest. The following day, Ju-man is called over by his senior at the office, who asks him whether he is familiar with Cheon's kimchi. Ju-man tells him that he has been in contact with their marketing team for quite a long time now, but his senior then asks him more specifically whether he actually knows who the owner of Cheon's kimchi is. Ju-man honestly admits that he does not know much about that side of things and tells his senior that he will do his best to build stronger ties with them going forward. However, his senior cuts in and explains that Cheon's Kimchi has made the decision to debut their product on teleshopping for the very first time ever, and that they have specifically requested Ju-man to be the one to manage their account. Sometime later, Ju-man meets up with Sul-hee and shares the news that he has been selected to manage the Cheon's Kimchi account. Sul-hee is immediately overjoyed for him upon hearing this, while Ju-man himself is still genuinely puzzled about how they even knew who he was in the first place. Sul-hee reassures him by saying that even a company like that must have heard through the grapevine just how talented he is at his job, and she points out that every single account he has managed up until now has completely sold out while on air. Just as their conversation is going, the employees along with the senior of the company suddenly appear at the door. On the other hand, Dong-man is going crazy because he didn't even sleep for a single second because he was thinking about Era. At the same time, Era wakes up Oswell because she couldn't sleep all night as Dong-man was in her head. Both of them then leave the house at the same time, getting surprised to see each other. After that, they go to the convenience store to eat instant ramen, and they happen to sit on different seats. Era wonders to herself whether Dong-man is simply going to brush past everything that just happened and pretend like nothing occurred, but before she can think too deeply about it, a notification suddenly pops up on her phone and she completely freaks out. She quickly tells Dong-man that she has just been invited to a news anchor interview. Later, the two of them head out together to go shopping and find the right dress for Era to wear to her interview. The shop assistant pulls out a whole bunch of different outfits for Era to try on, and with each one she steps out in, Dong-man finds himself genuinely shocked by just how beautiful she looks in every single one of them. Era goes through outfit after outfit, and no matter which one she comes out wearing to show him, Dong-man simply responds each time by saying that it looks fine. Growing a little frustrated, Era tells him to just be straight with her and point out which one actually looks the best on her so she can make a decision and buy it, but Dong-man completely freaks out and tells her that every single one of them looks absolutely amazing on her and he cannot choose. Meanwhile, across town, Ju-man wraps up his meeting and almost immediately notices that Yejin is looking unusually gloomy and down. Once everyone else clears out of the room, Yejin looks at him and asks what more she possibly can do to show him how she truly feels about him, also bringing up the fact that they have even kissed, which she believes is proof enough that there is something real between them. Yejin then turns and leaves the room, and when Ju-man later goes to check on Sul-hee and mentions the kiss, Sul-hee is completely caught off guard to hear that the two of them have actually kissed. Later that night, Ju-man repeatedly tells Sul-hee that he is truly sorry about the kiss and keeps insisting that it was so brief and quick that he barely even felt anything at all. However, this only makes Sul-hee even more furious, since the fact that he remembers it so clearly and, in such detail, completely contradicts what he is trying to say. She then looks at him and asks him point blank whether he honestly did not feel a single thing when she kissed him, and he tells her that it felt like nothing more than a slug landing on him and that he genuinely did not feel anything from it whatsoever. On the other side of things, Dong-man and Era are walking back home together, both of them quietly thinking about each other without saying it out loud. Dong-man breaks the silence by asking her whether she is free the following day, and Era immediately wonders to herself whether he is actually working up the nerve to ask her out on a date. However, he then comes straight out and tells her to come watch his upcoming match, and she instantly gets mad at him for even thinking about going back in for another round after the way he got completely beaten up the last time. At that very moment, Ju-man and Sul-hee also show up out of nowhere, and Dong-man cheerfully points out that the four of them have not all gotten together and hung out in quite some time, suggesting that they all make their way over to a nearby bar for a drink. Sul-hee declines the offer though, telling them that she is simply not in the mood for anything like that because of a certain someone she knows, making it obvious to everyone that something is clearly weighing heavily on her mind. The following morning, Era heads out for her interview, and as she sits there listening to the other competitors lay out their qualifications and experience, she begins to feel like she is falling well below the bar compared to everyone else in the room. The interviewers go through the other candidates and then skip right past Era without asking her a single question, which prompts her to speak up and ask them why they have not asked her anything at all. One of the female interviewers responds by bluntly telling her that her resume looks largely useless and suggests that while all of her peers were out there actively building up their resumes and gaining experience, Era was most likely spending that time hanging out and doing other things. The interviewer goes on to say that they want to see genuine passion from their candidates, but that such things are supposed to be backed up and proven through qualifications, not simply through personality alone. After saying all of that, Era then decides to get completely straight to the point, knowing full well that she is already failing the interview regardless of what she says or does at this point. She looks directly at the interviewer and tells her that she has known her for less than 10 minutes, so she has absolutely no business acting like she knows everything there is to know about her life and choices. Meanwhile, Yejin is in the middle of hosting a show centered around Cheon's kimchi, and during the show, both Yejin and Juman notice that one of the contestants on set keeps repeatedly scratching at her face in a way that seems far from normal. It soon becomes clear that the contestant is allergic to shellfish, which explains everything that has been happening with her on camera. The producer then makes the quick decision to pull everyone off and place both Yejin and Juman directly on the show together to keep things moving. At that moment, Sulhee happens to be watching everything unfold through the camera, and the second she sees Yejin and Juman together on set, she drops everything and runs as fast as she can straight toward the set. After that, they somehow manage to finish the broadcast as Sulhee not only burst at Juman but then she proceeded to eat all the kimchi in front of the cameras. The producer was furious and tore into her, but Sulhee's mukbang refocused the viewer's attention on the lettuce kimchi, and Cheon's kimchi sold out in an instant. Later, the owner of House Pyo's pork chops makes her way into the office to personally congratulate everyone and express just how proud she is of the outstanding job they all did. Yejin's mother pulls Juman aside and lets him know that her daughter never stops talking about him back at home, and that after witnessing firsthand just how hard and dedicatedly he works, she finally understands exactly why her daughter has always spoken so highly of him. Watching this whole interaction unfold right in front of her, Sulhee quietly wonders to herself whether she should just go ahead and make it clear to everyone present that she is practically already as good as married to Juman, and whether she ought to step in and warn Yejin to back off from him. The senior then chimes in and mentions that everyone around the office is pretty much in agreement that Yejin and Juman would actually make a really great couple together. Juman, however, is quick to set the record straight by firmly stating that Yejin and he are nothing more than professional colleagues, and without wasting another moment, he reaches over and takes Sulhee by the arm, making it perfectly clear to everyone in the room that she is his girlfriend. He also makes a point of telling Yejin directly that from this point forward, he expects things between them to remain strictly professional and nothing more. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, Era drags herself back home after yet another disappointing rejection and privately admits to herself that the outcome was honestly not all that surprising, especially considering how much she had allowed herself to say to the interviewer during the meeting. Just then, Era receives a call from Dongman checking in on how her interview went. Before she even gets the chance to fill him in on what happened, Dongman's coach steps in and forces him to hang up the call. Era is left unable to tell him that she had completely ruined what could very well have been her last real shot at becoming a news anchor. Shortly after, when Era slides open her window, she spots a poster advertising that the RFC is actively recruiting for a ring announcer position, and the idea immediately starts forming in her head that this could actually be something worth going after. 1 week later, Juman gets a call from his senior at work, who informs him that Cheon's kimchi will not be moving forward with a second broadcast alongside them, and tells him that it is now his responsibility to reach out to Yejin and convince her to come back on board. Ever since Juman had gone public with his relationship with Sulhee, his life had been shifting in noticeable ways, and the two of them are now on better and warmer terms with each other than they have ever been before. However, everything else in his life seems to be steadily falling apart around him, as his long-awaited promotion continues to slip further and further out of his reach with each passing day. That same night, Juman receives a call from Yejin, who tells him that she is in serious trouble and that he needs to get to her right away. On the other hand, Taehee walks back to where his car is parked and discovers Taksu already seated comfortably in the back of the vehicle, which immediately startles him. Taehi tries to reassure Taksu by explaining that there is absolutely no reason to be concerned about Dongman, since nobody is really going to pay attention to a match that is not even being broadcasted on television. He further calms Taksu down by mentioning that he and the matchmaker already have some kind of mutual agreement worked out between them, and that he has already arranged for a fighter who has previously defeated Dongman to step into the ring against him. Shortly after, Dongman ends up being matched against a fighter who goes by the name Byungju. During this time, Dongman is caught completely off guard when he suddenly spots Era in the crowd at the venue and is even more surprised to find out that she is actually serving as the very first female ring announcer in the entire world. One of the formally dressed men in suits points out that she could potentially be the only one allowed to hold that title, but only under the condition that she successfully makes it through the hiring process and gets accepted. Era confidently makes it clear that she fully intends to pass the interview, and that even in the unlikely event that she does not manage to do so, she will simply go somewhere else and become the first female ring announcer there instead. The man finds himself genuinely impressed by Era and decides to go ahead and offer her the job. Following all of that, Dongman's long-awaited match finally gets underway, and from the very first moment, he immediately picks up on the fact that his opponent's fighting stance appears to be just as sloppy and unpolished as it has always been. The opponent then launches himself directly at Dongman with everything he has, but Dongman hits him straight in the face and he knocks out. Later that evening, Juman happens to come across Yejin sitting quietly by herself out in the garden, and he makes his way over toward her to check in on how she is doing and ask whether everything is going okay. Yejin begins to tear up almost immediately, telling him that she has not seen him for an entire week and that the distance has been making her feel like her heart is on the verge of completely breaking apart. She also openly admits to him that she is fully aware he already has someone in his life and that he is not interested in her in that way, but that no matter how hard she tries, she simply cannot seem to get a hold of her own feelings for him. At the same time, Dongman calls up his mother in high spirits, telling her that he is going to be bringing a lot of money home and that he is also planning to take his brother Donghee out for a really nice and fancy meal to celebrate. Shortly after, Dongman goes out and buys presents for his friends, but Era immediately notices and asks him where her present is, making it clear that she expects to be included. Back on the other side of things, Juman then spots Yejin nearby and walks over to her, asking her what she is doing there. He gently places his hands on her shoulders and tells her not to cry, but completely unbeknownst to him, Sulhee is standing close enough to see everything. Later, Juman helps Yejin into a taxi, and just before she is able to leave, Sulhee shows up out of nowhere and makes it clear that the two of them need to sit down and have a serious conversation. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, Dongman pulls out a pure gold ring that he had gone out and bought specifically for Era, and she is completely taken aback and stunned the moment she lays eyes on it. She questions him about why he is presenting her with something so incredibly expensive, to which Dongman responds by pointing out that the two of them have been the closest of friends for a full 2 decades, and that he also wanted to do something special to celebrate and congratulate her on landing the ring announcer job. Era then questions whether it is actually normal for someone to go out and buy a ring as a gift with their very first paycheck, and Dongman insists that it absolutely is, adding that it was Juman himself who had told him that this was the right thing to do. Shortly after, Sulhee confronts Yejin directly and tells her that she wants her to stop reaching out to Juman completely and demands that she put an end to any attempts she may be making to take him away from her. Yejin wastes absolutely no time in refusing and fires back by saying that if he is the kind of person who can so easily be taken away, and then she fully intends to keep on trying regardless. The following morning, Dongman's doorbell goes off unexpectedly early, and when he makes his way over to answer it, he is genuinely surprised to find Hiren standing right there at his door. At the very same moment, Era happens to glance out through her window and is equally caught off guard to see that Hiren has returned. Hiren then turns to Dongman and wastes no time in bringing up the question of whether there is any real chance of the two of them picking up where they left off and starting things all over again. She makes the argument that he needs to stop directing his feelings toward Era, pointing out that the two of them have never actually been in a romantic relationship together despite all the years they have spent side by side. She goes even further by saying that after spending that much time around someone, people tend to grow attached to them the same way they get attached to a familiar piece of furniture, and that he should be careful not to mix up simple attachment with genuine romantic love, adding that if real feelings were ever going to develop between the two of them, they would have shown up long before 20 years had passed. Dongman listens to everything she has to say and then makes his own position absolutely clear by telling her that getting back together with her is simply not something he is able to do, given that they had already been down that road once before and whatever first love he had once felt for her had completely run its course and faded away a long time ago. He also makes sure she understands that Era is the only person who truly has his full attention and his heart right now. He walks straight over to Era and kisses her on the spot, declaring that he has no intention of ever letting her get away from him again. He also makes his feelings fully known by telling her that he wants her to officially be his girlfriend going forward. Later on, Era is still completely over the moon and buzzing with excitement over the fact that Dongman has told her that they are now in a relationship together, but her joyful moment gets interrupted when Sulhee suddenly shows up with the worrying news that Juman never made it home the previous night. The next day, Taksu decides to challenge Dongman for a match in order to put right a mistake from their past. During an interview, he also says that Dongman and he knew each other from their taekwondo days and he had heard about his sister's illness and offered him help out of his goodness. However, according to him, Dongman made a mistake of repaying his goodwill by purposely losing to him. Later that day, both fighters get to the ring to face each other. The match gets underway with Dongman mentally reminding himself that he needs to stay off the ground at all costs, exactly as his coach had instructed him, given that Taksu carries an enormous amount of experience and expertise from his many years of competing in the RFC. Dongman then surges forward and charges directly at Taksu, successfully landing a clean and solid hit right across his face. Taksu finds the whole thing embarrassing, considering how dangerously close he had just come to getting knocked out right there and then. Refusing to continue playing by the rules, Taksu then makes the calculated decision to throw all sense of fair play completely out the window by dropping himself flat onto the ground on purpose and calls out to Dongman to step in and make his move again. Dongman takes the bait and moves in, mounting himself on top of Taksu and instantly seizing full control of the dominant position, from which he begins raining down strike after strike directly onto Taksu's face in a relentless and unbroken rhythm. Taksu, however, manages to pull off a sneaky trick targeted right at Dongman's face, and takes full advantage of the brief window of confusion it creates to successfully wrench himself free from Dongman's hold. Taksu fires off a powerful roundhouse kick aimed straight at Dongman. Dongman, however, is absolutely fired up with fury at this point, and he wastes no time in responding with a perfectly executed roundhouse kick of his own that connects clean and hard right across Taksu's face, sending him crashing down to the ground completely knocked out. With that single powerful strike, Dongman claims the victory and wins the match, and the excitement and joy that fills the room is overwhelming, largely because everyone present understands just how much this moment means after Dongman spent a full 10 long and grueling years working toward it. Following his victory, Dongman is officially crowned the new RFC champion, and he and his coach move forward together by entering into a business partnership with one another. Later that same night, all four close friends gather together to spend some well-deserved time celebrating just how far each of them has come in their own lives. Make sure to like and subscribe the channel for more sports manhwa recaps.